Warrior Lore. Chapter 27-29. Invisible traces of laws were corroded by the power of the black snake. It was as if shackles had been broken and collapsed. Du Xiaofu only felt his mind tremble as he endured a great pressure. The treasures in the 33 heavens were indeed so unpredictable. The black snake formed from the underworld river's weak water really had the ability to corrode everything. It's a waste to have such a good thing in your hands. Du Xiaofu's eyes involuntarily revealed some greed when he saw the enormous black snake twisting and turning in front of him with a ferocious aura. He licked his lips and muttered. He coveted this kind of treasure very much. If he could obtain it, it should be able to bring him a lot of comprehension in the water attribute laws. Without any delay, Du Xiaofu instantly waved his hand. Several streams of light rushed out from between his eyebrows and rushed toward the huge black snake. They turned into 9 purple lightning cauldrons and tightly surrounded it in the center. Rumble. The 9 cauldrons moved horizontally in the void, oppressing the space until it rumbled and emitting a vast power. Terrifying purple lightning poured down and spread out in the void. Lightning filled the sky. 9 cauldrons come out together. Suppress all living things. Du Xiaofu roared, and 9 huge lightning bolts suddenly appeared from the 8 trigrams in the void, connecting with the 9 divine lightning cauldrons. The terrifying chi vibrated and continuously entered the cauldrons, adding to the terrifying power. Roar! Surrounded by the 9 cauldrons, the huge black snake hissed and howled. It seemed that at this moment, it also felt a great threat. The snake's body twisted and its huge tail slammed down toward one of the lightning cauldrons. Clang! A loud sound shook the air. It was like the sound of heaven. However, the lightning cauldron that was hit didn't move at all. It was like a towering mountain. It only shook twice before stabilizing again. The corners of Du Xiaofu's mouth could not help but curl into a smile when he saw this scene. How could something left behind by the master of the 3,000 greater worlds be so easily shaken? Moreover, a black snake formed by the weak water of the Nether River was not known for its strength. Oh. After its attack failed, the black snake hissed again. Waves of monstrous black gas gushed out from its body and continuously corroded the space. At the same time, it wanted to corrode the purple thunder profound cauldron. However, when that extremely terrifying black mist really touched the purple lightning profound cauldrons, the 9 divine lightning cauldrons let out a trembling sound at the same time. Large amounts of purple gold lightning spilled out, and the power of extreme yang shot out, crushing all the black mist. What kind of treasure is that? How can it be so powerful? The eyes of Dai Xuanjun, who was controlling the black snake, trembled fiercely. He was horrified by the power of the 9 divine lightning cauldrons. The weak water of the river Styx was obtained from the netherworld yellow springs. There were not many things in the world that could compare to the weak water of the river Styx. Even with the power of the divine general's residence of the Great Void Sect, they had only obtained a few drops after paying a huge price. As Dai Xuanjun's strongest move, he had to think for a long time to use it here. Just thinking about it made his heart ache. He originally thought that he could easily kill the purple-robed youth by using a drop of the weak water of the Nether River. However, when he saw the 9 divine lightning cauldrons, Dai Xuanjun was a little suspicious of his opponent's identity. Which great power and inheritance's disciple could have such a terrifying treasure with him? Those 9 terrifying cauldrons had at least surpassed the category of divine artifacts and reached the level of nomological true weapons. If that was the case, it was really too terrifying. If that's all you have, then I won't be polite. This drop of weak water of the Nether River is mine from now on. Du Xiaofu didn't think so much. He only spoke softly and controlled the purple thunder profound cauldron to descend. Rumble. Loud rumbles sounded as the 9 divine lightning cauldrons moved with the momentum, carrying an unparalleled force as they suppressed together. Torrential lightning struck, and the purple gold light instantly engulfed the huge black snake. Endless thunder and lightning boiled, rolling and roaring, and the loud noise shook the heavens. Even though the black snake had the power to erode everything, it couldn't withstand the continuous bombardment of thunder and lightning. No. Dai Xuanjin shouted anxiously. He flew and pounced on Du Xiaofu, trying to stop him. Is this all the young master of the great Void Divine General's estate can do? Du Xiaofu snorted. The Void 8 trigrams spun rapidly, releasing a monstrous pressure. The domineering domain, which had fused with the 8 trigrams, was unleashed again. In an instant, Dai Xuanjin's figure was confined, and his speed was greatly reduced. He was no longer a threat to Du Xiaofu. At the same time, the 9 divine lightning cauldrons shone brightly, and at the same time, they closed in and suppressed the black snake. The 9 cauldrons were heavy weapons, and the ferocious power they carried released a domineering aura that suppressed the black snake, causing it to roll and roar continuously. Oh, ao. The terrifying thunderbolt struck out, but they couldn't cause any harm to the snake. However, in the face of the combined attack of the 9 cauldrons, the snake could only struggle in the limited space. Waves of black mist emerged from the black snake's body, and its body quickly shrank. In the end, it became the size of a palm. Under the terrifying pressure of the purple thunder profound cauldron, it could no longer maintain its huge body. Suppress. Du Xiaofu shouted. His body moved under the Void 8 trigrams, and he walked toward the palm-sized black snake. At the same time, he waved his hand and passed through the seal of the 9 purple thunder profound cauldrons. He grabbed the snake in his palm of light and brought it to his side. Waves of power shot out and wiped out the imprint that Dai Xuanjin had placed on the black snake. In the end, the black snake turned into a drop of liquid that was as black as ink, and Du Xiaofu held it in his hand. The weak water of the Nether River. What a terrifying power of Yin! A terrifying corrosive power burst out, trying to invade Du Xiaofu's Xian Qi outside of his body, and then break into his immortal Xian body. However, under the pressure of the powerful aura, all of this was blocked by Du Xiaofu. Without Dai Xuanjin's control, Du Xiaofu was not afraid of this drop of the weak water of the Nether River. He took out a jade bottle from his cosmos bag and put the drop of the weak water of the Nether River into it. Then, he put it away, and a smile appeared on his face. He was satisfied. Little bastard, how dare you? Seeing Du Xiaofu take away the weak water of the Nether River, Dai Xuanjin was furious. That was his most precious treasure, and his biggest reliance in the origin space. Even the great Void Divine General's residence was unwilling to bear such a loss. Originally, he thought that he could use this treasure to easily kill the purple-robed young man in front of him, even if he had to consume more than half of the weak water of the Nether River. However, after Du Xiaofu took it away, Dai Xuanjin felt a lump of anger in his chest. His vision turned black, and he could not recover for a long time. Young Master Dai of the Great Void Divine General's residence, are you going to admit defeat so quickly? Du Xiaofu said with a smile, looking at Dai Xuanjin. Kid, the Great Void Divine General's residence will not let you go. Dai Xuanjin clenched his teeth and said hatefully. The little bastard in front of him had already formed a deep grudge with him. His second brother was crippled by him, and Dai Xuanjin had ruined their plan to save the 6th prince and the little princess. Today, Dai Xuanjin had taken away his treasure. How could Dai Xuanjin not feel resentful? However, he was indeed no match for Dai Xuanjin. If they fought head-on, he would be the one at a disadvantage in the end. At this moment, Dai Xuanjin wanted to retreat, and he wanted to break free. You still dare to talk big in front of me at this time. I don't know if you're stupid, or if you think I'm stupid. Do you really think I don't dare to kill you? Du Xiaofu looked at Dai Xuanjin mockingly and said word by word. As he spoke, his tone became deeper and deeper. The grudge had already been formed. With Du Xiaofu's character, he would naturally kill until the end. He would not allow any threat to exist. He did not think too much and waved his hand. The 9 purple lightning profound cauldrons in the void whistled and moved, heading straight for Dai Xuanjin. Each of the 9 cauldrons carried a monstrous strength and released an extremely terrifying pressure. They were like numerous large mountains that were bathed in the lightning glow that filled the sky as they pressed down on Lin Fan's head. Ah! Dai Xuanjin let out a tragic cry. Endless power shot out as he tried to break free from the 9 purple lightning profound cauldrons. However, The domineering domain that had fused with the void 8 trigrams had a powerful binding force. No matter how hard he struggled, he could only use a small part of his movement. How could he be faster than the purple lightning profound cauldrons? In just an instant, the 9 cauldrons rumbled as they arrived and smashed onto Daishuanjin in unison. At this moment, the first young master of the Great Void General's residence finally felt despair. His body trembled violently, and a look of horror brewed in his gloomy eyes as his pupils rapidly shrank. But in the end, he could not escape the judgment of fate. Under the restriction of Du Xiaofu's domineering domain, Daishuanjin had no ability to resist at all. He could only let the 9 purple lightning profound cauldrons hit him one by one. Dong, 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 dong. Every hit made a dull sound, as if a heavy hammer was hitting a muffled drum. Daishuanjin spat out mouthfuls of blood. His chest caved in under the tremendous force, and every bone was broken into pieces. When the 9th purple lightning profound cauldron landed, his body exploded into a cloud of blood mist with a bang and filled the void. Then, Du Xiaofu gently waved his hand. A strong wind appeared out of thin air and blew away the blood mist, causing it to disappear into thin air. This, young Master Dai is dead. Young Master Dai died so quickly. How is this possible? With young Master Dai's strength, he did not even have the power to resist in front of that guy. This is too terrifying. Who is he? How can he be so terrifying? Is this the kid's true strength? It's unbelievable. They're both at the perfect stage of seizing divinity. Why is the gap so great? In the distance, the people from the several divine generals' estates saw everything with their eyes, and all of them were filled with panic. They found it very difficult to understand why 2 people with similar cultivation could have such a huge gap in their true strength. That purple-robed young man's methods were really too shocking. Big brother. In the crowd, Daishuanzi let out a miserable cry. He was so despondent. His big brother was like a god in his heart. His talent was outstanding, and he was the strongest among his 3 brothers. But now, his second brother was crippled, and his big brother died in Du Xiaofu's hands. This made Daishuanzi feel unprecedented despair. No matter what, he did not dare to believe that everything before his eyes was reality. Oh no, young Master Dai is dead. We can't stop him anymore. Retreat quickly. Otherwise, only death is left for us. After the initial shock, the dozens of people quickly came to their senses. That purple-robed young man was like a god of death, making them unconsciously feel terrified. Before the other powerhouses arrived, they really didn't dare to face them head-on. At this time, if they didn't withdraw quickly, what awaited them was only death and the disappearance of their Tao. Retreat quickly. Retreat to the periphery of the array. Under the restriction of the divine wilderness heaven-lock array, that kid has no way back. Let's go. As long as we retreat a little, he won't be able to catch up to us. When the other experts come in, they will have a chance to join forces to kill him. Everyone was in a panic. How would they dare to stay near Du Xiaofu? They quickly moved and flew towards the periphery of the mountain range. However, these people were not afraid. Under the cover of the divine wilderness heaven-lock array, that kid would not be able to do anything. As long as they escaped from this area, he would not be able to do anything to them. Run. Daishuanzi quickly recovered from his sorrow and followed the other experts. His big brother was dead, his second brother was crippled, but he could not let anything happen to him. Otherwise, who would inherit the Great Void Divine General's estate? Want to escape? Since you're here, then none of you can leave. Leave your lives behind. Looking at the dozens of people, Du Xiaofu softly opened his mouth and muttered. Since they were enemies, there was no reason for him to let them go. Kill. Behind Du Xiaofu, the golden rock wings appeared and flapped rapidly, filling the sky with golden light. As long as his body flashed, he would disappear from his original spot. The golden rock speed was too fast. In the blink of an eye, he had caught up with the people from the Divine General's estate. The 9 purple lightning profound cauldrons followed behind him like shadows, emitting a ferocious aura that covered the sky and earth. That guy is chasing us. Run. Run. We'll be safe if we move forward a little more. Among the dozens of people, no one was weak. Although their speed was not as fast as Du Xiaofu, they were all extremely fast. They moved with all their might and flew in one direction. After traveling for another few dozen miles, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. We're safe. We're safe here. We have the precepts to travel through the array. No matter how capable that guy is, he can't catch up with us. He'll soon be lost in the array. Everyone felt a sense of relief after surviving a disaster. They all stood in the distance and watched the purple-robed youth fly over. Kid, you won't live for long. Even if you don't die today, the Divine General's estate will hunt you down. Dai Xuanzi looked at Du Xiaofu with hatred and swore in his heart. At this moment, he was actually grateful to the purple-robed youth. Because of what the purple-robed youth had done, Dai Xuanzi had the chance to inherit everything from the Divine General's estate. After this operation in the chaotic element space, all the credit that the Divine General's estate had obtained would be on his head. And all of this was thanks to that kid. However, no matter how much gratitude there was, it had little to do with hatred. That little bastard still had to die. Kid, let's see how you're going to act when you're trapped in the Divine Barren Heaven Lock formation. Dozens of people held their breaths and quietly watched the purple-robed youth fly over. As the distance between them grew closer and closer, there was no fear in their eyes like before. On the contrary, everyone was looking forward to it. They were silently counting down in their hearts, as if they would see the purple-robed youth crash into the invisible barrier in the next moment. However, Du Xiaofu's body swept across and arrived in front of everyone in the blink of an eye. Everyone's expectant gazes had yet to fade, but they stood in their original spots in a daze, unable to regain their senses for a long time. Such a scene petrified them. They simply could not believe that what they were seeing was reality. In fact, Du Xiaofu was indeed affected by the Divine Barren Heaven Lock formation as he moved forward. There was a huge resistance. But after he executed the domain of absolute hegemony, it was just as Elder Kong had said. He directly plucked himself out, and he was within an independent space that didn't affect the space of the Divine Desolation Heaven Lock formation in the slightest. As such, the formation was no longer able to restrain his footsteps, and he could freely travel through it. Clearly, such a scene caused the people from the Divine General's estates to be inexplicably astonished. How? How could this be? The Divine Barren Heaven Lock formation can't trap him. How is this possible? Many people were horrified. Due to the huge shock, they did not think of continuing to flee. All of you are stretching your necks and standing here. Do you all want to die so badly? Du Xiaofu said coldly. He waved his arm and the 9 divine lightning cauldrons suddenly flew out. They turned into 9 streams of light and charged towards the crowd. Run. Only then did the dozens of people wake up from their stupor. They all felt a chill run down their spines. Only now did they think of continuing to flee. However, Du Xiaofu's speed was not something these people could match. The 9 cauldrons shook the sky and torrential purple lightning poured down, instantly engulfing the figures of more than 10 people. A large amount of lightning rose and a destructive aura shot out, obliterating the bodies of the experts, turning them into a bloody mist. Shrill cries spread out in the sky. The lineup of dozens of people was crushed in an instant, and the scene was too horrible to look at. Don't come over. Don't come over. Dai Xuanzi, who was in the crowd, directly collapsed and fell to the ground as he shouted in panic. His gaze carried unprecedented fear. The 9 divine lightning cauldrons that fluttered in the sky were like world-shocking weapons that emitted a terrifying might. The violet-robed young man before him was like a peerless demon king that walked towards him step by step. Chapter 27:30. Dai Xuanzi was paralyzed on the ground as he watched Du Xiaofu walk over step by step. He used both his hands and legs to kick about as boundless shock surged out from his eyes. You know fear now? Weren't you quite arrogant when you were being savage with me a few days ago? Du Xiaofu didn't pay attention to his shock at all. He stretched out his hand and beckoned from afar. A divine lightning cauldron whistled over and smashed towards Dai Xuanzi. He didn't have the slightest bit of pity. Since Dai Xuanzi was an enemy, then he wouldn't show any mercy. Bang! An enormous crater appeared on the ground where Daishuanjin was standing. Shattered rocks were scattered all over the ground, and a wisp of dark red could be faintly seen mixed together with a dense smell of blood. I don't care what divine general estate you're from. Since you've offended me, then all of you can go die. Du Xiaofu lightly snorted. The 9 cauldrons whistled through the air like numerous, enormous mountains. They carried the force of 1,000 kilograms as they crushed all the people from the various divine general estate. Not a single one was left alive. After doing all this, he didn't delay any longer. He directly flew up and flew towards the outer area of the divine desolate heaven-lock formation. With the assistance of the absolute hegemony domain, the grand formation was no longer able to trap him, and Du Xiaofu was able to freely travel through it. In this way, he raised his speed to the limit and quickly left the range of the grand formation. There are still many fortuitous encounters in the origin space. Such benefits are absolutely not to be missed. Du Xiaofu released He Jibai, Yu Chengliang, Yu Chengyu, and the others from the ancient desolate space. His gaze focused into the distance as he muttered to himself in a low voice. However, the people around him were not in the mood to listen to his words. After He Jibai, Yu Chengliang, Yu Chengyu, and the others had joined forces with the various divine general estate, how could they still have the mood to look for fortuitous encounters? To them, this was no longer a land of treasures that contained countless benefits. Instead, it was a place where they could be killed at any time. As far as he knew, there were already people from the Divine General's residence of Taishu Divine General, Yuanding Divine General, Xian Huang Divine General, Nia Huang Divine General, and Yin He Divine General. They had already plotted many things before entering the primordial space. Among the remaining 5 Divine General estate, only the Divine General Zihong Divine General's estate, where He Jibai was from. As for the other 4 Divine General estate, they still didn't know whether they were friends or foe. Therefore, the 6th prince and the little princess both wanted to find their royal brothers and sisters first and unite all their forces to face the crisis together. This was the best choice. 6th princess, how many royal brothers and sisters are in the origin space? Du Xiaofu turned his head and looked at Yu Chengliang and Yu Chengyu. In addition to 6th brother and I, 3rd sister, 4th brother, and 5th brother are also here. As long as we meet up with them, it won't be so easy for those divine generals' manners to attack us. The little princess Yu Chengyu pursed her red lips and said softly. While she was speaking, a slender hand lifted a strand of hair from her forehead. Her delicate face was indescribably moving. Apart from the 5 of us, there's also Sister Jixin from the Zihong Divine General's estate. We have to find her as soon as possible to prevent those divine generals' estate from plotting against her. No one outside should know about what happened here. It's better to spread the news as soon as possible. Yu Chengliang thought for a while and said. The worry in his words was obvious. The news indeed needs to be spread. But if we spread it rashly, I'm afraid that those divine generals' residences will stake everything. Now that the 4 divine generals' residences have lost a lot of people, they still have a lot of power outside. It seems that many big and small forces in the Yuqing Divine Kingdom have also joined them. We can't be careless. He Jibai once again displayed his otherworldly aura and calmly analyzed. When he and Du Xiaofu entered the Divine Wilderness Heaven-Lock Formation, they were intercepted by people from the Evergreen Valley. In the depths of the formation, they saw hundreds of people besieging the 6th prince and the little princess. It was obvious that those divine generals' residences had joined forces with many other forces to prepare for a shocking move. Brother Jibai is right. The little princess nodded and agreed with He Jibai's words. Brother Du, what are you going to do next? He Jibai turned his head and asked Du Xiaofu. As he spoke, there was a hint of anticipation in his eyes. However, it was only for a fleeting moment, and he concealed it very well. Although he really wanted Du Xiaofu to travel with him, He Jibai also knew that his brother Du was quite opinionated. He and the others had already caused him so much trouble, so it was not good to ask for his help. We're not familiar with this place, and we don't know where your companions are. Why don't we travel together? We can slowly plan for the rest. Du Xiaofu thought for a moment and said. He only felt that He Jibai was a good person. Not only did he look very similar to Qingguyu, they were both so handsome and had the same straightforward personality, which suited Du Xiaofu's taste. The biggest difference was in the temperament of the two. One was warm, and the other was cold. If that's the case, then that's great. When the little princess heard Du Xiaofu's words, she suddenly shouted and clapped her hands in joy. But just as she finished her actions, she seemed to have thought of something and her voice came to an abrupt stop. Her swan-like neck suddenly turned red and she lowered her head in embarrassment. Cough, cough. Seeing this, Yu Qingliang coughed dryly and said, "If that's the case, we'll have to continue to trouble Brother Du." They had all seen Du Xiaofu's strength and were deeply impressed. Everyone had considered in their hearts that the purple-robed young man in front of them was probably difficult to find a real opponent among the younger generation of experts in the entire Yuqing Divine Kingdom. After they walked out of the ancient desolate space and heard Du Xiaofu say that Dai Xuanjun, Zhong Su, Wang Qixuan, Qi Weicheng, and Qi Weidun had all died, Yu Qingliang, He Jibai, and the others were really shocked for a long time. To be able to ignore the restrictions of the divine, desolate heaven-lock formation and kill Dai Xuanjun and so many experts with his own strength, this was definitely not something an ordinary person could do. This time, Du Xiaofu had already helped them a lot. If they could still travel together, it would be an unknowingly greater guarantee. Don't delay, let's go. Du Xiaofu did not say anything. He directly waved his hand and led everyone into the distance. The matter in the divine, desolate heaven-lock formation had been settled for the time being, and there were many experts on the way. Du Xiaofu did not want to continue wasting time there. On the one hand, he did not want to miss the benefits of the origin space. On the other hand, it was time for him to find the chaotic origin energy and break through to the true severing realm. However, he still had a strange feeling about breaking through to the true severing realm. Thinking about it, what Elder Kong told him should not be the real situation. Ever since living beings stepped on the path of cultivation, they naturally needed to rely on many heavenly materials and earthly treasures to break through and improve. However, if it was said that the chaotic origin energy was the only thing to enter the true severing realm, he would not believe it no matter what. There must be other methods, such as using one's own comprehension and cultivation to break through. However, since this was the cultivation method of everyone in the 33 heavens, it was not good for him to question too much. Everything, when it was time to know, there would be a conclusion. Along the way, they did not have a clear direction. They were like headless flies, wandering around in the primal chaos space. During this time, He Jibai and Yu Qingliang both tried to contact the people maintaining order in the origin space, wanting to pass on the situation here to the outside world. However, with those people's ability to be elusive, wanting to find them was no different from finding a needle in a haystack. Most importantly, with the divine desolate heaven-lock formation in the way, the many experts maintaining order were unable to discover that several divine generals' estates had joined forces to kill the princes and princesses. Naturally, they would not easily reveal themselves. Next, we have to do our best to cause trouble here. The bigger the trouble, the better. Let those experts maintaining order intervene. At that time, everything will naturally become clear. Du Xiaofu said as he flew. He Jibai, Yu Qingliang, and Yu Qingyu all nodded, deeply feeling that this was a good idea. However, before that, they still had to gather everyone in one place to prevent the matter from becoming too big to be resolved. I'm just afraid that after the divine general's estates outside know about the situation, they will directly take action and cause even more trouble. Although Yu Qingliang agreed with Du Xiaofu's words, he was also more worried. If the matter was exposed early, it would force the divine general's estates to stake everything on a single throw. At that time, there would definitely be more chaos. However, they were not afraid. With the existence of the Yuqing Divine Kingdom's imperial family, they were not afraid that the divine general's estates would rebel. Just the Yuqing Divine Emperor alone was enough to intimidate many divine generals. In addition, the imperial family naturally had other experts. The divine general's estates did not have the power to overthrow the divine kingdom's rule. Where is the origin chaos energy and how to obtain it? Do you know? Du Xiaofu asked softly. Right now, What he wanted the most was the origin chaos energy. As long as he broke through to the true severing realm, he would have more power to protect himself. In the 33 heavens, where there were countless experts, strength was the foundation of a foothold. Outside, the tomboy, little Xingxing and the others' whereabouts were unknown. He still needed to search for them. Furthermore, many of his family and friends in Shan Wu world should still be eagerly waiting for him, hoping that he could establish a foundation and bring them to explore this vast world. Du Xiaofu could imagine how anxious those fellows would be after he left without saying goodbye with a few of his men. It was because of these considerations that Du Xiaofu did not want to waste any more time in the origin space. He wanted to use the matter of the Divine General's estates, rebelling to create a huge commotion and find an opportunity to leave this place early. 20 years of training, to him, was far too long. This place was indeed a treasure trove, but to him, the most useful thing was the origin chaos energy that could help him break through to the true severing realm. The origin chaos energy is the most important thing in the origin space. In this entire space, if there is no origin chaos energy, then there is not much meaning to it. Otherwise, the Yuqing Divine Kingdom would not treat this place as the most important treasure trove for the younger generation to train here. As the sixth prince of the Divine Kingdom, Yu Qingliang understood everything very well. He paused for a moment, then continued. This space was left behind from the ancient times. After Pangu split the heavens and earth, it was the last place left behind by the chaos. In the entire Yuqing Divine Kingdom, only here can you find origin chaos energy. Naturally, many of the great powers have a lot of it. But to the younger generation of experts, searching and fighting here can not only help them break through, but also train them. It is killing two birds with one stone. Brother Du, if you want to find origin chaos energy, it is not difficult, but you will have to face some challenges to do so. That's right. Origin chaos energy does not exist in a physical state. It cannot be used directly. You can only find a place that contains origin chaos energy and extract it step by step to condense it into origin chaos energy. He Jibai said to Du Xiaofu after Yu Qingliang's words. Extract it step by step? Du Xiaofu frowned slightly. He did not expect that origin chaos energy would have to be obtained in this way. It seemed that this was indeed a challenge, and it was not as easy as he had imagined. As for the place where origin chaos energy can be extracted, you will need to have a keen sense of the laws to find it. We can't be sure of the specifics, but we can be sure that with Brother Du's understanding of the laws, as long as you come across such a place, you will be able to determine that there is origin chaos energy there. Yu Qingliang looked at Du Xiaofu, smiled slightly, and said again, Why is that? Du Xiaofu was puzzled. He looked at Yu Qingliang, then at He Jibai, and asked, I wonder if Brother Du has heard of origin chaos energy? He Jibai asked with a smile, but before Du Xiaofu could answer, he continued, When you reach the great completion stage of the seizing divinity stage, you will have a complete mastery of the laws. You can sense origin chaos energy, and origin chaos energy can be condensed into origin chaos energy. Origin chaos energy condenses into origin chaos energy. So that's how it is. Du Xiaofu finally understood that origin chaos energy must be extremely extraordinary. Otherwise, it would not be so easy to sense it after mastering a complete mastery of the laws. After knowing these things, he felt a little more confident in his heart. If he wanted to obtain origin chaos energy and step into the truth-severing stage, he must first sense origin chaos energy. In the process of their conversation, they did not stop their footsteps. With their strength, flying in the void was really incomparably fast. In less than half a day, they had already traveled tens of thousands of miles. Endless mountains and rivers flew past their feet at a rapid speed. After a series of exchanges, everyone stopped talking and just kept moving forward. They only wanted to find the other princes and princesses as soon as possible, as well as He Jibai's sister, He Jixin, and the others. However, while everyone was hurrying, they also released the power of their primordial spirit and constantly probed everything around them, so as not to miss some incredible opportunities. But in reality, their main focus right now was not on finding benefits, so they directly skipped over many ordinary treasured lands. Every place in the origin space carries an aura that is completely different from the outside world. It's incomparably vast. Just the Yuqing Divine Kingdom has such an extraordinary place. Then in the entire 33 heavens, how many powerful secret places are there? As Du Xiaofu walked forward, he was thinking about some random things in his heart. He was truly lamenting about the vastness of the origin space. Moreover, the aura here was extremely extraordinary, and it contained endless opportunities and benefits. If it were not for the matters of the outside world, he really wanted to make good use of these 20 years and explore this place properly. He believed that by then, he would definitely reap a great harvest. But some things were far more important than obtaining benefits. Right? How could I forget such an important thing? Suddenly, Du Xiaofu slapped his head and secretly called himself stupid. But when his actions fell into the eyes of He Jibai, Yu Qingliang, and the others, they all looked at him with strange gazes. They did not know what Du Xiaofu had thought of, and why he suddenly showed such an expression. Elder Kong has stayed in the origin space for a few tens of thousands of years. If there's anything, can't you just ask that old man directly? Du Xiaofu paid no attention to their strange gazes and directly separated a strand of his soul core to enter the origin space. After a wave of light flashed before his eyes, the figure of the flaming skeleton that sat cross-legged on the ground appeared before him. Elder Kong. The energy of his soul core transformed into the appearance of Du Xiaofu's main body, and he directly flashed over to Elder Kong's side before shouting out. But his shout didn't draw any movement from the flaming skeleton. At this moment, the flaming skeleton seemed to have fallen into a deep state of cultivation. Elder Kong? Du Xiaofu shouted once more. This time, his voice was even louder and sharper, and it pierced his own ears to the point they hurt. Stinking kid, I told you not to disturb me. What are you making a fuss about? Elder Kong was shaken by Du Xiaofu's roar to the point his bones trembled, and he instantly left his state of cultivation and cried out with displeasure. Strands of crimson-red flames shot out from the 7 apertures of the flaming skeleton. Obviously, at this moment, he was greatly infuriated by Du Xiaofu's actions. Hee. When facing the furious Elder Kong, Du Xiaofu squeezed out a smile and said stiffly, Junior has something to ask of you. Can't you put it aside for later? You're actually disturbing me from recovering my strength. Don't ask, I don't know anything. Elder Kong was unable to restrain his rage, and he turned his face to the side and left Du Xiaofu with a bright red back of his head. Du Xiaofu was astounded. This old fellow's temper is really not small. He thought for a moment and grinned. Elder Kong, I only have a few questions, and I'll naturally leave once I'm done asking, and I won't disturb your recovery any longer. With your answers, my strength will surely improve even more swiftly. At that time, it would surely be twice the result with half the effort to help you find treasures. Don't you think so? The flaming skeleton stared straight at Du Xiaofu and was silent for a long time before it said impatiently, If you have something to say, just say it. Fuck off after you're done asking, and don't come hovering before me. Chapter 2731. The smile on Du Xiaofu's face grew wider when he heard Elder Kong. He knew that this old fellow was a true eternal realm expert, and under the circumstances that the meditative realm experts in the 33 heavens didn't make an appearance, he was an absolute peak existence. Besides that, he was familiar with the ancestor of Yuqing Divine Kingdom as well. Even though his words were filled with disdain towards the ancestor, the relationship between the two of them was surely not ordinary. Of course, all of this was only something that Du Xiaofu could figure out with slight inference. What he was most concerned about was how Elder Kong had entered the chaotic dimension. If he obtained Elder Kong's help, then would he have the chance to leave this dimension in advance and do what he wanted to do? Du Xiaofu's expression turned serious, and he didn't hesitate in the slightest to ask directly. Elder Kong, I want to leave the chaotic dimension in advance. Do you have any way to help me? Elder Kong glanced angrily at him and said, If my strength was still present, then how could this dimension be able to trap me? But now, my strength isn't even 10% of my peak state, so it's impossible for me to help you. Otherwise, I would have left by myself a long time ago and wouldn't have to stay here and listen to your nonsense. Air. Elder Kong, don't you have a deep relationship with the ancestor of Yuqing Divine Kingdom? You ought to have a way to contact him, right? If you're able to ask him for help, then wouldn't you be able to leave at any time? Du Xiaofu looked hopefully at the flaming skull as he asked. Humph. Elder Kong grunted coldly and said, I've been trapped here for a few tens of thousands of years. If that old kid finds out about this, then wouldn't he laugh his head off? I refuse. Even if I'm trapped here to death, I'll absolutely not ask him for help. Du Xiaofu was extremely astounded. This old fellow is really trying to save face. Moreover, he could imagine that Elder Kong hadn't obtained the consent of Yuqing Divine Kingdom when he entered the chaotic dimension all those years ago, and he'd probably snuck in secretly. Now that he'd fallen into such a state, how could he have the face to meet an outsider? Even you can't do anything about it? Du Xiaofu was slightly disappointed. He originally thought that he would be able to obtain an effective method from Elder Kong, but never had he imagined that he would be happy for nothing. Kid, don't be disappointed. At this moment, Elder Kong spoke again, and he said to Du Xiaofu, according to what I know, every time the juniors of the Yuqing Divine Kingdom train in the origin space, those old fellows will secretly observe them. If something that goes beyond the rules occurs, then they will probably intervene when they find out. This junior already knows. Du Xiaofu nodded. He Jibai had already told him about this. So, if you really want to get out in advance, then make a big fuss. Drag everyone in this space in and turn them upside down. Do you think those little bastards won't show up? Elder Kong didn't even hesitate as he said this. Du Xiaofu was speechless. This old fellow's thoughts were really the same as his. But Du Xiaofu wasn't too confident that if those top experts were to forcefully interfere with everything here and allow the training to continue, then what should he do at that time? But obviously, Elder Kong had thought of this as well, and he chuckled slyly as he said with a gloomy and hoarse voice, Let me teach you a move that can force that old kid out. You just have to wait for those fellows that maintain order to show up and tell them. The flaming skull chuckled slyly as it moved closer to Du Xiaofu's ears and whispered for a long time. Du Xiaofu knew that the old kid this old fellow spoke of was naturally the ancestor of the Yuqing Divine Kingdom. But when he heard the idea Elder Kong gave him, Du Xiaofu's expression became more and more strange, and he was unable to make a decision in his heart. He was even thinking that if he really did as Elder Kong said, then would he be slapped to death by that ancestor of the Yuqing Divine Kingdom? But obviously, Elder Kong didn't care about all this at all. He only cared about speaking, and as for the final outcome, it wasn't related to him in the slightest. I understand now. After he finished listening to Elder Kong, Du Xiaofu let out a long sigh of relief, and then he spoke with a surprised and bewildered expression. Even though he knew that this old fellow's instructions surely carried some ill intentions, Du Xiaofu didn't refute it because he had his own plans in his heart. At most, I'll directly bring out this old fellow when the time comes, and it ought to not cause the ancestor of the Yuqing Divine Kingdom to become hostile. After asking a few more questions, this strand of Du Xiaofu's soul core left the desolate dimension and returned to his main body before continuing on their journey with He Jibai, Yu Qingliang, Yu Qingyu, and the others. Under such circumstances, only on the third day did Du Xiaofu sense a slightly different aura. Actually, the aura within the origin dimension was extremely different from the outside world, and it possessed an extremely dense ancient aura that suffused the air. After He Jibai and the others told him, Du Xiaofu knew that this ancient and mysterious aura was the desolation chi they spoke of earlier. However, in most places in the origin dimension, the desolation chi was very thin, almost negligible. It was simply not enough to condense primal chaos chi. And on this day, what Du Xiaofu felt was many times thicker than usual. There should be desolation chi here. Let's explore deeper. Perhaps Brother Du can take the opportunity to break through to the true severing realm in this place. He Jibai said rather excitedly, even more excited than Du Xiaofu himself. Let's go. Du Xiaofu didn't waste any time. He took the lead and led the group forward. After another day, dozens of people stopped in the air above a huge lake. This lake is very unusual. The source of the desolation chi should be somewhere not far from here. Yu Qingliang's gaze swept the surroundings as he said softly, Brother Du, Your perception is stronger than ours. It shouldn't be difficult for you to discover that peculiarity. Yu Chengliang's words made Yu Chengyu and He Jibai nod. Their strength was far from Du Xiaofu's, so he was naturally the leader of this small team. If they could condense primal chaos qi, then there was a very high chance that Du Xiaofu could break through to the true severing realm. At that time, when facing the people from the divine general's residences, they would also have a very high chance of victory. The source of the desolation qi? Du Xiaofu's gaze drifted as he carefully investigated. This lake was extremely vast. At a glance, it seemed to be boundless. The lake water was like a mirror, calm and without any ripples, reflecting the figures of the people in the air. On the lake surface, wisps of mist invisible to the naked eye drifted and curled up like rising clouds, magnificent and beautiful. With Du Xiaofu's powerful primordial spirit, he naturally captured this scene clearly. After searching in all directions without any results, his perception probed into the lake water, heading towards the depths. I think I should have found it. Du Xiaofu suddenly smiled and said to the people around him. Immediately after, he stretched out his hand and pointed at the bottom of his feet. An invisible force spread out and hit the surface of the lake. Splash! The lake water seemed to be pushed aside by an enormous force, with Du Xiaofu's feet as the center. It began to recede in all directions. The surface of the lake below everyone began to sink, leading straight to the depths of the lake. Following that, the rich, ancient, and desolate aura became even more vigorous. Could it be that the source of the desolation qi is under the surface of the lake? He Jibai raised his eyebrows, looked at the scene below his feet, and said aloud, "It shouldn't be wrong. Let's go down and take a look." Du Xiaofu nodded. Then without any hesitation, he directly flew down and with a splash, dived into the lake water. He Jibai and the others looked at each other, then moved at the same time. Their figures disappeared in the blink of an eye, and only a few bubbles appeared on the surface of the lake before it became silent again. This lake is really unbelievably deep. While diving, Yu Chengyu sighed. They had already dived a distance of 3,000 feet, but they were still in the vast lake water, and they could not see the scene below clearly. However, with the strength of these people, they would not encounter any accidents in the lake water. However, for the sake of convenience, and to prevent too much of a commotion, Du Xiaofu had already put all the subordinates of the three into the desolate ancient space. "We're almost at the bottom," Du Xiaofu said softly, and his figure quickly descended. In the perception of his primordial spirit, the deepest part of the lake was like an endless mountain range, winding in all directions, like a crouching dragon. Steep and towering mountain peaks stood erect, arranged in rows upon rows. There were no towering trees on the mountain range, but mottled aquatic plants of various colors, swaying under the gentle flow of the lake water. The four of them landed on a tall mountain peak, and once again began to size up the surrounding situation. Although I can't feel the existence of the desolate qi, just standing here makes me feel comfortable all over, and the circulation of the qi in my body is much faster. He Jibai took a deep breath, and with an expression of extreme enjoyment, he took a deep breath. Du Xiaofu also had the same feeling, but what he felt was much clearer than the other three. He could feel a formless aura pervading the lake water, and it was extremely dense. And the source of this aura was emitted from the mountain range below their feet. After extracting the desolate qi, one can obtain the primordial qi, and with the help of the primordial qi, one can have the opportunity to break through to the true severing stage. Du Xiaofu's eyes were shining, and without thinking much, he floated down, sat cross-legged on a bare rock, and began to close his eyes to sense. This is a treasured place for cultivation. Although we are still unable to extract the primordial qi, cultivating here will be twice as effective as cultivating in the outside world. Yu Chengliang said to He Jibai and the little princess. Hearing this, the two of them nodded. This was indeed a treasured place that could not be missed. Cultivating with the help of the desolate qi is not at all comparable to cultivating in the secret places of our respective families. He Jibai said. They did not want to miss such an opportunity. Now that they were facing a great threat in the primordial space, if they could increase their strength here, they would have more power to protect themselves. How could the three of them hesitate? At the same time, they landed at a place not far from Du Xiaofu and began to meditate and cultivate. Begin extracting the desolate qi. Du Xiaofu closed his eyes, and the qi in his body began to circulate rapidly. An invisible wave rippled out, and the entire lake shook slightly, and a strange aura drifted out. Immediately after, the desolate qi in the lake flowed and gathered crazily toward Du Xiaofu, rushing directly into his body. The desolate qi is something left behind from the beginning of the world and the beginning of the primordial chaos. It is the first evolution of the primordial chaos. In the entire 33 heavens, except for a few special places, it does not exist in other places. As he sensed with his heart, Du Xiaofu was also constantly thinking. He thought of what He Jibai and the others had said to him. If you want to extract the primordial qi, you have to gather enough desolate qi. However, it's not that easy to extract the desolation qi. Du Xiaofu already knew that if he wanted to obtain the primordial qi, he had to have an extremely deep understanding of a certain kind of power of law between heaven and earth. Only then could he absorb the desolate qi through the power of law and continuously condense it to obtain the primordial qi. However, this process was also fraught with danger. This was because all the living beings in the 33 heavens, except for those with extremely high cultivation, could not withstand the pure power of the primordial qi. The primordial qi that existed before Pangu split open the heavens was both magical and quite violent. If one was not careful, the cultivators below the true severing stage would have their physical body and primordial spirit torn apart, and their body and soul destroyed. However, if one could successfully extract the primordial qi and use it to break through to the true severing stage, the benefits would be unimaginable. In the outside world, when the disciples of many forces broke through, they used the primordial qi prepared by their elders to break through, but they could not comprehend more profound dharma and logos. Because of this experience in the primordial space was an excellent opportunity for the younger generation of experts, especially those who had reached the peak of the seizing divinity stage. Du Xiaofu had long been prepared for this. Every breath he took was accompanied by an invisible desolation qi. Wisps of purple gold light appeared on his body, scattering into the lake water, indescribably gorgeous. At the same time, waves of invisible qi constantly entered his body through every pore of his skin. Du Xiaofu's tendons and veins hummed. After the desolate qi entered his body, he could clearly feel that his qi suddenly became abnormally active, and the flow speed was many times faster than usual. It could be said that the desolate qi contained more energy than the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Even if it was only a quarter of an hour, it was more effective than cultivating outside for a day. Such a comparison was simply too terrifying. Du Xiaofu continued to absorb the desolate qi in the lake water, like a giant whale sucking in water. Large amounts of desolate qi were absorbed by him, turning into the purest energy for his own use. However, what he needed to do was far more than that. Time slowly passed. Du Xiaofu, Yu Chengliang, and Yu Chengyu were all immersed in a deep state of cultivation, not paying attention to anything outside. This state was extremely magical. It was as if they had drunk sweet wine, causing them to be incomparably intoxicated. It was also as if they had fallen into an incomparably mysterious dream, causing them to feel indescribably happy. Gradually, their divine senses began to seal themselves, and they only focused on absorbing the boundless qi here. Only He Jibai silently opened his eyes. Looking at the state of the three people around him, a smile appeared on his face. Although this primordial chaos space is extremely large and the bottom of the lake is even harder to find, I'm still afraid that someone will accidentally barge into this place. I still have to protect them, He Jibai softly muttered to himself, closed his eyes again, and continued to absorb the desolate qi. But this time, he controlled himself to stay awake, paying attention to the movements around him, in case anyone came to disturb him. At the bottom of the lake, not too far away from Du Xiaofu's group of four, there were two figures nervously confronting each other. These two figures were both women. Their appearances were similarly delicate and beautiful, and their beauty was unparalleled in the world. However, the temperaments of the two were completely different. One of them was a woman dressed in palace attire. Her eyebrows were gently curved, suffused with a peach color. She was lovely and moving, as if she had the power to hook one's soul. At a glance, it made one feel as if they were about to fall into it. The corners of her rosy lips curled up slightly, containing a faint smile. Her red lips parted slightly as she said, "Hijishin, if you know what's good for you, obediently surrender and come with me, lest you suffer any more physical pain." The woman opposite her was dressed in a water-pattern dress. Her face was delicate and pretty, and she looked natural and unrestrained. However, at this moment, there was a trace of blood flowing out from the corner of her mouth, and then it was melted by the lake water. Her hair was also a little messy, showing a somewhat miserable appearance. If one looked closely, one would be able to see that this woman's face was somewhat similar to Hijibai's. They were both so outstanding that if one were to look at her in a crowd, it would be difficult to forget her even if one wanted to. Hijishin wasn't in a hurry to answer the woman's question. Instead, she unhurriedly stretched out her two slender hands and tightened the belt on her skirt. Coupled with her tall and slender body, it outlined a near-perfect curve. After doing this, she pushed the messy hair on her forehead to the back of her head. Following that, a light flashed in her hand, and a flaming long sword appeared. Gurgle, gurgle. After the long sword appeared, the surrounding lake water suddenly boiled and directly turned into mist. It quickly evaporated and squeezed out an empty area where she was standing. A brazen aura suddenly erupted, setting off her incomparably exquisite body, which was extremely different from her original temperament. A vast blazing aura rippled from the long sword, and at the same time, it carried an absolute sharpness as it directly charged towards the figure opposite her. If Hijibai, Yu Chengliang, and the others saw this woman, they would definitely not be unfamiliar with her. This was because she was Hijibai's biological sister, the eldest daughter of Divine General Zihong's mansion, Hijishin. Chapter 2732. Tanai Ruwei, you and I have traveled together to this place, yet you sneak attacked me while I was extracting the chaotic vital energy. What are your intentions? Hijishin's body released a powerful aura at the same time, and at the same time, she continuously circulated her chi to forcefully suppress the injuries in her body. She looked at the woman in front of her with a serious expression. She frowned slightly, and a trace of coldness appeared in her beautiful eyes. The woman in front of her was the eldest daughter of the Divine General Xian Zhan's estate of the Yu Qing Divine Kingdom. The two of them had a good relationship. They met in the origin space and traveled together. When they found the chaos chi at the bottom of the lake, they agreed to seize it together to help them break through to the truth-severing stage. Who would have thought that she would be attacked when she started to extract the chaotic vital energy, causing her to be seriously injured? Although it was not obvious on the surface, her strength had been greatly reduced. She had lost at least 50% of her strength. If Hijishin had not been vigilant at that time, she would have been half dead. How could she have the chance to confront the woman in front of her? Ha ha! The woman called Tantai Ruwei suddenly covered her red lips with her hand and giggled. After a while, the crisp laughter suddenly stopped. She said, Hijishin, when you are captured by me, I will naturally tell you what you want to know. Are you going to surrender, or do you want me to capture you? You must know that you are no match for me with your injured body. She looked at Hijishin with a smile in her eyes. Her words were gentle and natural, as if everything was under her control. Tantai Ruwei, there is no conflict between the Divine General Zihong's estate and the Divine General Xian Zhan's estate. Why do you do such a despicable thing? Are you not afraid of a war between the two Divine Generals' estates? Hijishin did not give up and continued to ask. The 10 Divine Generals' estates of the Yu Qing Divine Kingdom were suppressed by the imperial family, so there was not much friction between them. They had always lived in harmony. Moreover, there was no enmity between the Divine General Zihong's estate and the Divine General Xian Zhan's estate. Hijishin and Tantai Ruwei grew up together. Although they weren't very close, they were childhood friends. They competed with each other and grew to where they were today. She really wanted to know exactly what Tantai-Rue's objective for doing what she did today was. But this wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing was that she was seriously injured, so she had to continuously stall for time and use this to recover some of her strength. Only then would she have a chance to escape. Otherwise, if he were to go head-on against Tantai-Rue, then he would definitely be the loser in the end. But it was very clear that Tantai-Rue also saw through her thoughts and directly said to her, "Hijishin, stop stalling for time. Since I've already made my move, there's no reason for me to let you off so easily. Unfortunately, you were also on guard against me, so I didn't make you lose all your strength in one strike. But that doesn't matter. Today, no one can save you." As Tantai-Rue spoke, the palace dress on her body suddenly swelled up, and an incomparably bright light burst forth, dazzling people to the point that they were completely unable to open their eyes. At the same time, numerous muffled thunderclaps resounded out and shook the bottom of the lake, causing the surrounding lake water to be unable to help but start to shake. The might of lightning was emitted and carried a terrifying dignified aura. Strands of lightning were like swimming snakes that raged through the lake water. Since it's like this, then let's fight. Hijishin was able to discern that Tantai-Rue really wouldn't let her off easily, and Tantai-Rue was determined to capture her today. In fact, she'd already made countless guesses in her heart, and she wanted to guess the intentions of Tantai-Rue or the Dark War Divine General's estate. But she was unable to know if Tantai-Rue's actions were instructed by the Dark War Divine General's estate. No matter how Hijishin racked her brains, she was still unable to figure out the crux of the matter. When she saw Tantai-Rue starting to execute her boundlessly violent might, Hijishin tossed aside the chaotic thoughts in her mind and didn't hesitate any longer as her delicate figure flashed forward. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The long sword in Hijishin's hand shook, and an enormous flame dragon shot out and roared as it charged forward. This flame dragon was like a pillar and was extremely terrifying. It carried along a boundless blazing aura, as if it was capable of burning everything in the world as it attacked Tantai-Rue with extreme ferocity. Hiss, 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 hiss. Under such a scene, the surrounding lake water evaporated even more swiftly, and it transformed into mist that covered the sky and completely enveloped the figures of the two people within it. Strings of bubbles arose from it, and it completely pushed out the surrounding lake water. Fierce thunder in the sky, kill. Within the boundless mist, the smile on Tantai-Rue's face had already been withdrawn, and it became extremely cold and suffused with killing intent. Her delicate hand lightly swung, and an enormous bang resounded out as a terrifying gap was blasted open in the space at the bottom of the lake. A dazzling bolt of lightning struck out from the spatial rift and fiercely charged towards Hijishin's flame dragon. A bolt of lightning and a flame dragon, both of them were extremely terrifying and contained boundless energy. In an instant, they collided and emitted a rumbling that shook the heavens and the earth. The two of them shattered upon contact and were annihilated while carrying destructive energy as they started to madly devour each other. Two strands of energy coiled and swept out towards the surroundings, causing space to shatter and the lake water to shake. Numerous dense talisman markings flew out and swept through everything in their path, and at the same time, they quickly drowned out the figures of the two people. Retreat. After this strike, Hijishin's countenance clearly became even paler, and a strand of blood flowed out from the corner of her mouth, and she raised her sleeve to wipe it off. Before the violent energy struck her body, she swiftly retreated and fled towards the distance. Even though her strength had been damaged, it wasn't difficult to notice that her strength was obviously at an absolute disadvantage after coming into contact with Tantai-Rue's. The balls of lightning ceaselessly corroded the energy of the flames, and it probably wouldn't be long before all the storms stopped. If another strike came, then she probably wouldn't have much strength left to resist it. At that time, not to mention retreating safely, even preserving her life wouldn't be easy. So, Hijishin's retreat was extremely direct and efficient. She was pushed along by the boundless energy storms and instantly appeared in the distant lake water. The flames on her body were covered, and she didn't even have the time to look back and only focused on fleeing for her life. Want to flee? I'm afraid you won't be able to do that today. It wasn't long before Tantai broke free from the entanglement of the energy storms and swiftly pursued Hijishin. Bolts of lightning charged out from her body and slashed open an expanse of space before her, and her figure flashed swiftly. She was much faster than Hijishin. The distance between the two of them was ceaselessly shrinking, and it probably wouldn't be long before Hijishin would be able to catch up to Hijishin. Ugh! Hijishin, who was dashing forward, let out a muffled groan once more, and then she frowned slightly and swallowed the sweet and fishy blood. When she sensed the movement behind her, she unconsciously increased her speed. However, with her strength greatly reduced, there was no way Hijishin could be faster than Tantai. Seeing Tantai quickly approaching, Hijishin's eyes flashed with anxiety. But now, there was no better way to deal with all this than to keep running. In such a scene, the two of them, one chasing and one fleeing, quickly traversed an extremely long distance at the bottom of the lake. Not too far away from the two of them, Du Xiaofu, Yu Chengliang, Yu Chengyu, and He Jibai were still sitting cross-legged on the mountain rocks at the bottom of the lake. They were constantly absorbing the desolation qi that was everywhere, and doing their best to improve their cultivation. However, the first three of them were immersed in an indescribable state and were completely unaware of what was happening in the outside world. To a cultivator, this desolate qi was a treasure that was hard to come by. Unknowingly, it could make people deeply intoxicated by it and rapidly raise their cultivation. I just need a little more comprehension, and I can truly break through to the God-seizing realm. In a short period of time, Hijibai could already clearly feel the changes in his body. He originally had the strength of the perfection of the void-returning stage, and he was only one step away from the God-seizing realm. After absorbing such a huge amount of desolation qi, it was also greatly beneficial to the comprehension of the law of fire. This caused Hijibai to be a little excited. It could be said that the cultivation of the God-seizing realm was very rare among the younger generation. The entire origin space encompassed most of the young experts in the Yuqing Divine Kingdom, but the number of God-seizing realm experts was not large. It was because Hijibai was born in a wealthy family like the Divine General Zihong Mansion, so he came into contact with people with extraordinary talent, and there was no lack of God-seizing realm experts around him. Not to mention, his own sister, Hijishin, had already reached the perfection of the God-seizing realm, leaving him far behind. In fact, this had caused Hijibai to feel a lot of pressure. As the son of the Divine General Zihong Mansion, he naturally did not want to fall behind others. He wanted to obtain an extremely high position among the younger generation and bring glory to his entire family. However, it was not easy to break through a big realm. He had been in the void-returning stage for many years, but he had not been able to make a real breakthrough. Now, with the help of this treasure land, he could take a peek at the threshold of the God-seizing realm, and he could not help but feel a little excited. He even wondered if he should be like the few people around him and directly immerse himself in the state of Imo Kaming and quickly make a breakthrough. However, as soon as this thought appeared, it was immediately dispelled by him. Let's wait for them to wake up first. At such a critical moment, there must be no accidents. Hijibai held back his impulse and thought in his heart. He forcibly suppressed the thoughts in his heart. The most important thing now was to protect the three people around him. If there was an unreasonable person who barged in and affected Du Xiaofu and the other two, the consequences would be unimaginable. Of course, with Hijibai's strength, he could completely stop most people in this origin space. As long as it was not an expert of the God-seizing realm, he could deal with the general situation. Chi. Not far from Hijibai, Du Xiaofu's body was suffused with golden light, which spread in the lake. It was indescribably gorgeous, making him look like a purple gold sun. At this time, his mind was completely immersed in an indescribable, mysterious state. His body automatically absorbed the chaos qi surging from the lake, and then dormant in his meridians. As the chaos qi accumulated more and more, it finally reached a state of saturation, filling his body. However, all this did not stop there. Instead, it became more intense, and a large amount of qi surged wildly, drilling into the purple-robed young man's body. At this time, The chaos chi that was injected into Du Xiaofu's body entered a process of compression and refining, and began to transform into the chaotic chi. Brother Du is really amazing. Have you started to extract the chaotic chi? The changes in Du Xiaofu's body did not escape He Jibai's senses. He could not help but be surprised by Du Xiaofu's talent. Although the two of them called each other brothers, through Du Xiaofu's information, He Jibai also knew that the purple-robed young man's actual age was a full 100 years younger than him. Up until now, he had only cultivated for a few decades. In comparison, He Jibai suddenly felt ashamed. The gap between the two of them was really too big, and they were not on the same level at all. If Du Xiaofu could successfully condense the chaotic chi and use it to break through, then he would truly be in the true severing realm. Such a terrifying talent, even in the entire supreme Chang Rong heaven, was an existence that could be counted on one's fingers. Perhaps only within the 36 Holy Lands, there were only a few people who could be compared to him in terms of age and talent and could truly compete with him. Just as He Jibai was shocked by Du Xiaofu, the changes in the purple-robed young man's body were still constantly happening. Wisps of chaos chi were extracted. Under the full control of Du Xiaofu's mind, the chaos chi was compressed and purified. Only a very small part of the chi could be condensed into the chaotic chi. This was a process of extracting silk from a cocoon. It was incomparably slow and difficult. If he wanted to obtain enough chaotic chi, it would take a lot of time. As time continued to pass, finally, at a certain moment, Du Xiaofu's body suddenly exploded with a roar. It was as if there was a sudden clap of thunder in his tendons and meridians. An invisible shock wave rippled out, pushing away the surrounding lake water. Have you finally extracted a wisp of chaotic chi? Not far away, He Jibai exclaimed in surprise. He had keenly captured this invisible shock wave. The elders of the divine General Zi Hong's residence had already informed him of this situation. Therefore, in an instant, He Jibai knew that he had successfully taken the first step. Not only him, but even Yu Chengliang and Yu Chengyu, who were sitting cross-legged on the ground, were also awakened by this shock wave. After the two of them looked at each other, they saw a touch of joy in each other's eyes. I hope Brother Du can succeed in one go this time, and refine enough chaotic chi to step into the truth-severing stage in one go, Yu Chengliang said silently, with a faint look of anticipation. Du Xiaofu's increase in strength was also an additional layer of protection for them. But the process of extracting chaotic chi is extremely dangerous. If one is careless and is hit by the majestic chi of the chaotic chi, one will be seriously injured and his cultivation will be crippled. In serious cases, one will directly die and his body and soul will be destroyed. He should be able to do it. Little Princess Yu Chengyu looked worried. Her large eyes stared at the purple-robed young man without blinking. You don't have to worry too much about this. With Brother Du's talent, under the condition that he is not disturbed by external matters, this matter should not be difficult for him. He Jibai smiled slightly, as gentle as jade. He had great confidence in Du Xiaofu. However, when Yu Chengliang and Yu Chengyu heard these words, they also agreed with them. Let's wait here and guard Brother Du while we are at it, Yu Chengliang said. The other two nodded in agreement. However, just as Yu Chengliang's voice fell, an accident suddenly happened. A tremor resounded, transmitted through the lake, and entered the ears of the three people. Boom, boom, boom. Then, a huge wave came crashing down, causing the lake water to churn. It was like a violent tsunami, directly sweeping over. Under the huge impact, the surrounding space was trembling uncontrollably. The turbid waves surged into the sky, pouncing on their faces. The lake water carried an incomparable killing intent, destroying everything in its path. Amidst the loud rumbling, the mountain range in the distance was constantly shaken apart. Then, huge rocks exploded one after another, turning into fine powder and melting in the lake water. It was extremely turbid. What's going on? He Jibai was incomparably shocked. He was just thinking that at such a moment, it would be best if nothing unexpected happened. But who knew that before he could retreat from the bottom of his heart, such a scene would immediately appear. This caused his heart to sink. There are experts fighting, and they are coming towards us. As the only one of the three who had reached the God-seizing stage, Yu Chengliang's perception was even sharper than He Jibai and Yu Chengyu's. In his perception, there were two auras that were fiercely clashing, and they were quickly moving towards the four of them. It wouldn't be long before the battlefield shifted to this place. Yu Chengliang had long since released all the qi in his body, stabilizing the surrounding space to prevent it from affecting Du Xiaofu, who was beside him. To be able to cause such a huge commotion, the strength of those two must be quite extraordinary. This is a bit troublesome. I hope they don't disturb Brother Du. He Jibai's handsome brows were tightly knitted together, and his eyes were filled with worry. I'm afraid that those two people have the strength of the God-seizing stage, and the aura of one of them seems to be much stronger than mine. Yu Chengliang opened his mouth once again and said such a sentence. Due to the obstruction of the lake water, coupled with the fact that the strength of the two people on the other side was far above his, Yu Chengliang could not clearly detect everything. Chapter 27:33. Everything that happened in the outside world did not affect Du Xiaofu for the time being. Under the protection of Yu Chengliang and the other two's qi activities, the terrifying impact of the lake water was firmly blocked outside and did not touch Du Xiaofu at all. However, the faces of the three people in the field involuntarily turned ugly, revealing an extremely solemn expression. The two powerhouses who were fighting were definitely at the top of the younger generation of the Yuqing divine nation. Perhaps they were no strangers to them. They only hoped that there were not people from the Divine General's residence of Taishu Divine General Inhe's residence, and other hostile Divine General's residences. They had just escaped from the attack not long ago. If they met those people again, the situation that the three of them faced would be absolutely terrible under the circumstances that Du Xiaofu could not help them. However, the world was mysterious. What they feared would happen. In the perception of the three people, the surrounding mountain range was cut off everywhere. Rocks flew everywhere and collided with the lake water, stirring up endless waves. Rumble. A huge roar shook the area as if there was an invisible big hand that reached deep into the area and stirred vigorously as if it wanted to overturn the area. Even with Yu Chengliang's strength, it was gradually becoming difficult to resist the terrifying vibration. Under the probing of his Yuan spirit, the two figures were finally getting closer and closer, and he was able to clearly capture their figures. "Oh no, it's Sister Jixin," Yu Chengliang suddenly shouted. His expression changed abruptly, and he said in a deep voice, "She's injured and is being chased by Tantai Ruwei." As soon as he said this, He Jibai and Yu Chengyu's expressions turned cold. This was especially true for He Jibai, whose face had turned extremely ugly. The sister Jixin that Yu Chengliang mentioned was naturally his sister, He Jixin. At this moment, she was being chased by Tantai Ruwei and was severely injured. She was absolutely at a disadvantage. This made the three of them feel extremely solemn. The situation was really getting worse. Why is Tantai Ruwei chasing Sister Jixin? The people from the Divine General Xian Zhan's residence and the Divine General Zihong's residence don't have much conflict. There shouldn't be such a big fight, Yu Chengyu said. He did not understand the connection between them. However, after she exchanged a look with He Jibai and Yu Chengliang, they all saw a possibility in each other's eyes. Could it be? The three of them said in unison and had a certain guess. If this guess was true, it was definitely the worst thing that they had encountered today. However, before they could communicate further, an exquisite figure flew straight over and brazenly smashed into the front of the few of them. "Sister!" He Jibai shouted immediately and waved his hand to release a ball of gentle qi to catch the figure. It was a woman wearing a water-patterned silk dress. She was tall and slender, and her face was outstanding. She resembled He Jibai a little. She was He Jibai's sister, the eldest daughter of Divine General Zihong's mansion, He Jixin. Jibai. After being caught by He Jibai, He Jixin was able to see the face of the person who caught her. When she realized that it was her younger brother, she could not help but be surprised. However, before she could say anything, she spat out a mouthful of black blood and soaked it in the lake water. Immediately, He Jixin's face became extremely pale, as if she had lost all her blood essence and was as white as a sheet of paper. "Sister, how are you?" At this time, Hijibai could no longer stay calm. Seeing his sister's appearance, he felt that it was difficult to breathe. He stretched out his palm and probed with a wisp of qi. He found that He Jixin's current situation was extremely serious. Her meridians were badly damaged, and there was no qi in her spirit gate. With such a terrible injury, if she did not adjust her qi, it would cause irreparable consequences for her future cultivation. Hijibai did not need to think too much. He began to frantically circulate the qi in his body and penetrate it into He Jixin's body. Haha, so there are so many people here. At that instant, a demonic laugh could be heard, followed by a slender figure arriving gracefully. The palace dress swayed in the lake water like a fairy. It was indescribably otherworldly as it landed in front of everyone. However, such a beautiful scene made Yu Chengliang, Yu Chengyu, and the others feel inexplicably nervous. Of course, they knew the person in front of them. Who else could it be other than Tantai Ruwei of the Divine General of Xianzhan's estate? They all knew that Tantai Ruwei's strength was outstanding among the young experts of the Yuqing Divine Kingdom. She was even above Daishuanjin of the Divine General of Taishu's estate. She was a true genius. Of course, Daishuanjin was already a dead man at this time. Sister Ruwei, why did you attack Sister Jixin? Before Yu Chengliang could speak, Yu Chengyu rushed to speak. The way he addressed Tantai Ruwei was very respectful. In fact, she already had an answer in her heart. However, the enemy was strong and she was weak. She had to pretend and delay for as long as possible. Haha, you can ask He Jixin about this matter. Tantai Ruwei rolled her charming eyes and threw the question to He Jixin. In fact, when she sensed that Yu Chengliang and the others were here, she was quite surprised. This was because she had already received news that Daishuanjin of the Divine General of Taishu's estate, Zhong Su of the Divine General of Xuanhuang's estate, Wang Qishuan of the Divine General of Niahuang's estate, and Qi Weicheng and Qi Weidun of the Divine General of Yuanding's estate had already brought the Divine Wilderness Heavenlock formation to trap and kill the 6th prince and the little princess. With the strength of those people, they naturally didn't need to worry about the two escaping. In addition, with the help of the Divine Wilderness Heavenlock formation, it was difficult for an accident to happen. However, at this moment, she saw them standing in front of her as if nothing had happened at all. Could it be that Daishuanjin and the others failed? Tantai Ruwei frowned imperceptibly as she thought in her heart. This possibility made her feel somewhat incredulous. Unless there was some kind of huge change, those people would absolutely not have failed. Jibai, I was injured by Tantai Ruwei's sneak attack. You have to be careful. He Jixin didn't respond to Tantai Ruwei's words. Instead, she said this. Under He Jibai's qi, her face turned slightly red, but the qi in her body was still dry. Her injuries were serious, and she wouldn't be able to fight for a short period of time. 6th prince, little princess, leave He Jixin and He Jibai to me. The matter here has nothing to do with you. Tantai Ruwei said with a grin as she looked at Yu Chengliang and Yu Chengyu. Tantai Ruwei, do you think we're so easy to fool? I'm afraid that after we hand them over, no one will be able to leave here. Yu Chengliang didn't have as much patience as the little princess and directly calling Tantai Ruwei by her name. His words were filled with strong killing intent. Oh, 6th prince, why do you say that? As a member of the Divine General's estate under the Divine Kingdom, how could I dare to be rude to the princes and princesses? Even if you give Ruwei 10,000 guts, I would never dare to make a move against the two of you. Tantai Ruwei covered her mouth with one hand as she laughed delicately. However, there was killing intent brewing in her eyes. Yu Chengliang's words made her almost certain that the 6th prince and the little princess must know a lot of things. Humph! You even dare to attack Sister Jixin. Is there anything you don't dare to do? Yu Chengliang suddenly snorted coldly and stared straight at Tantai Ruwei. I'm afraid that your Divine General's estate has long been in cahoots with the Divine General's estate of the Great Void Divine General and Nie Huang Divine General's estate. You actually know all about it? Tantai Ruwei was already mentally prepared when she heard Yu Chengliang's words. She didn't show much surprise and only asked this question lightly. She could imagine that there must have been an accident when Daishuanjin and the others took action, allowing the 6th prince and the little princess to escape and appear here. Your divine general's estate actually conspired against the princes and princesses of the divine kingdom. What kind of unspeakable plot are you planning? Don't tell me you're not afraid that the imperial army will trample your families to the ground? Hearing Tantai Rui's admission, Yu Chengliang was furious and continued to ask loudly. He had already confirmed that 5 divine generals' estates were involved in this incident. Now there was another divine general's estate. How could Yu Chengliang not feel indignant? As one of the 10 divine generals' estates under the divine kingdom, 6 of them were in cahoots. Their actions in the origin space were tantamount to treason. Since when did more than half of the divine kingdom's forces become so hostile to the imperial family? Ha ha ha, Tantai Rui was still laughing. She said, if we were afraid, we wouldn't have done these things. Whether the imperial army can raise our divine general's estates is not something I need to worry about, and you won't have the chance to see it again. As she laughed, her voice suddenly stopped, and a trace of viciousness crept onto her elegant face. Waves of undisguised murderous aura rippled from her curvy body as she charged towards Yu Chengliang's group. As she took a step forward, she continued, you know too much. Leave with me, and you'll be able to save your lives. So as to avoid encountering others, I'm afraid they'll send you directly to hell. As Tantai Rui spoke, the imposing aura on her body continued to rise. Balls of lightning coiled around her body like dragons twisting and swimming, and it made her seem like a goddess. Ha 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 ha! Faced with Tantai Rui's pressing step by step, Yu Chengliang suddenly laughed loudly while using his aura to resist. This strange laughter stunned Tantai Rui, and a strange light flashed in her eyes. But before she could ask, she heard Yu Chengliang say, Tantai Rui, do you really think you can kill us? Such a question caused Tantai Rui's beautiful brows to be unable to help but raise abruptly, and her footsteps stopped abruptly. She didn't move for a short while as she wanted to hear what Chen Shi would say next. Dai Xuanjun, Wang Qishuan, Zhong Su, Qi Weicheng, Qi Weidun. Oh, there's also Helian Shang. So many people were unable to kill us while relying on the divine desolation, heaven lock formation. You dare to make noise before us by yourself? Yu Chengliang's gaze burned as he looked at Tantai Rui with a gaze that seemed as if he was looking at an idiot, and it contained indescribable disdain. But in reality, he was terrified and uneasy in his heart, yet he tried his best to pretend to be calm and even seemed as if he was devising a strategy. His objective was to buy time. With their strengths, even if they were added together, they were far from being able to sweep through with a single hand of Tantai Rui's. The only person capable of going against her was He Jixin, yet she was heavily injured at this moment, and she'd almost lost her ability to move. If they didn't adopt a strategy, it would be very difficult to contend against her head-on. Most importantly, behind them, Du Xiaofu was still in a state where his spiritual sense was completely sealed. He was absorbing the desolation qi and refining the primal chaos origin qi, thereby using it to break through to the truth-severing stage. If he were to be attacked, the consequences would be unimaginable. Therefore, Yu Chengliang could only release a large amount of fog, intending to use this to intimidate Tantai Rui for a short while. Of course, a short while was definitely not enough for Du Xiaofu to completely refine the primal chaos origin qi. But right now, Yu Chengliang really didn't have a better way to resolve the crisis. Hee, little brother sixth prince, you want to use such words to intimidate me? Do you really think Rui is a fool? Tantai Rui continued to laugh, but her heart was beating like a drum, calculating the truth of Yu Chengliang's words. She was indeed intimidated. The facts before her eyes forced her to think carefully. At the same time, her eyes stared straight at Yu Chengliang, wanting to see something from his eyes. However, to her disappointment, the sixth prince opposite her was indescribably calm at this time. That arrogance didn't seem to be fake. Humph, Tantai Rui. I'm not afraid to tell you that Dai Xuanjun, Zhong Su, and hundreds of others have already gone down to the 18th level of hell to report. If you don't believe me, you can try to attack us. I can guarantee that you'll follow in their footsteps. Yu Chengliang slightly raised his chin, cast a sidelong glance at the stunning woman in front of him, and said indifferently, if your divine General Xian Zhan's mansion repents from the wrong path and stops here, I can consider giving you a chance to make up for your mistakes. However, you've offended the dignity of the imperial family. You can avoid death, but you can't escape punishment. Some things have to be paid a certain price. Divine General Xian Zhan's title will definitely be demoted. It had to be said that Tantai Rue really hesitated. Suspicion arose in her heart, and countless thoughts flashed through her mind in an instant. Yu Chungliang's confident appearance couldn't make her not think carefully, weighing the pros and cons. However, she'd never thought of stopping here. There were some things that she couldn't decide. She was only considering whether she should make a move now and take down these young people before her. However, according to Yu Chungliang's words, there seemed to be an expert hidden behind them that could easily sweep away the joint forces of Daishuanjin, Zhongsu, Wang Qishuan, Helian Shang, and the others. It was even to the extent that even entering and leaving the divine, desolate Heavenlock formation was like walking on flat ground. If it was really like this, then that expert strength was absolutely terrifying, and it was at least in existence at the truth-severing stage. Otherwise, under the joint forces of Daishuanjin and Helian Shang, two experts at the perfection stage of the seizing divinity stage, and numerous other experts, it was absolutely impossible for the sixth prince and the little princess to appear here safe and sound. Tanai Rue wasn't sure if such an expert existed or not, but she was sure that they definitely had someone helping them. In fact, she'd noticed the violet-robed young man sitting cross-legged not far away since long ago, and she'd even noticed him at the very beginning. Moreover, she determined at the first possible moment that he was similarly an expert at the advanced stage of the seizing divinity stage, and his strength wasn't inferior to hers. But Tantai Rue didn't dare think about it at all. How could someone at the perfection stage of the seizing divinity stage possibly rescue the sixth prince and the little princess from the encirclement of a few hundred experts? This was absolutely impossible. Tanai Rue, this prince's words represent the imperial family, so you can consider it. However, even though we have time, we can't wait forever. I'll give you 4 hours, and it should be sufficient for you to slowly think about it. But this prince hopes that you won't leave an area of 30 m from us, and don't try to escape. Otherwise, you'll surely die a graveless death. Yu Chungliang continued to put on an act and spoke in a powerful and resonant voice. Beside him, He Jibai and Yu Chengyu were also glaring at Tantai Rue, as if she would be directly killed by the expert in the dark if she didn't cooperate. They couldn't help but admire Yu Chungliang's ability to fabricate nonsense. His words were half true and half false, and he used both the carrot and the stick. While he was advising her with good intentions, he was also threatening her with a big stick. He actually beat the woman in front of him into a daze and forcefully intimidated her. However, He Jibai and He Jibai clearly saw that Yu Chungliang's hands behind his back couldn't help but tremble. Obviously, he was extremely nervous in his heart. Take your time to think about it, and come to this prince when you've made up your mind. Yu Chungliang said such a sentence, and then they saw him leisurely walk to do Xiaofu's side and sit cross-legged. He closed his eyes and began to breathe in and out the primitive qi here. This wave of fog made him feel enormous pressure. If it weren't for his strong willpower, Yu Chungliang was afraid that he would collapse. Humph! The little princess snorted softly and walked to her brother's side. She followed suit and no longer paid attention to Tanai Rue. He Jibai, on the other hand, carried He Jixin and placed her against a rock. He began to circulate his energy to heal her injuries. Looking at this scene, Tantai Rue didn't speak for a long time, but her eyes kept moving around, trying to find some clues. She didn't dare to be careless at all, and was unwilling to gamble with her life. What's more, she even thought that the unknown expert might have some deep relationship with the purple-robed young man over there. Otherwise, with the status of the sixth prince and the little princess, they shouldn't be here waiting for him to refine the chaotic qi. For a time, Tantai Rue hesitated for a long time. After several observations, she didn't find any trace of the expert in the dark, which made her feel confused again. Chapter 2734. Tantai Rue didn't know if Yu Chungliang was telling the truth, or if he was merely bluffing to deceive her, especially when he said, "This prince hopes that you won't leave within 30 m of us, and don't try to escape. Otherwise, You'll die a graveless death. It sounded extremely confident. If he didn't have absolute confidence, would he really dare to be so domineering and fearless? Tantai Ruwei was slightly hesitant. She didn't know what to do, and she didn't move for a long time. Her slender brows were knit together, and her almond-shaped eyes contained boundless conflict. It was precisely when her heart was surging with emotions that an explosion sounded out from the nearby violet-robed young man. It was like muffled thunder, and it caused Tantai Ruwei to be suddenly shocked. Refining chaotic energy? He's actually able to accomplish this. He's another expert at the perfection stage of the seizing God stage. Tantai Ruwei's thoughts moved to Du Xiaofu. She'd never seen this young man, but she couldn't doubt that this fellow's natural talent wasn't inferior to her at all. Tantai Ruwei was extremely puzzled. When did such an outstanding figure appear in Yuqing Divine Kingdom, yet she was completely unaware of it? After all, it was impossible for her to not have heard of those of the same generation that were able to attain the perfection stage of the seizing God stage. Could it be that the greatest reliance of Yu Chengliang, He Jibai, and the others is that person behind him? Tantai Ruwei thought like this, but suddenly, her heart thumped as she thought of a certain possibility. However, she didn't dare believe this possibility. Could it be that the failure of Daishuanjin and the others to kill Yu Chengliang and Yu Chengyu was caused by this kid? And the so-called expert that's hidden in the shadows is completely false? Once such a thought appeared, she was unable to restrain it any longer. The more she thought about it, the more she felt that there was definitely something strange about it. Right now, there were two things that could be determined. The first was that behind the sixth prince and the other two, there was indeed a supreme expert hidden, and it was at least at the severing truth stage. The second was that the so-called expert was the purple-robed youth in front of them. Although Dai Xuanjin, Helian Shang, and the others were still defeated by a single person with the help of the divine, desolate heaven-lock formation, which was inconceivable, it was not impossible. Compared to the latter, Tantai Ruwei was more willing to believe the latter based on her intuition. If that's really the case, then wouldn't I have been intimidated by Yu Chengliang? Tantai Ruwei thought in her heart, and an indescribable feeling of annoyance arose in her heart. She felt she'd been deceived, but at the same time, she was also endlessly glad that she had not been deceived. When she thought of this, the corners of Tantai Ruwei's mouth curled into a wisp of an alluring smile once more. With light steps, she slowly walked towards the direction where Yu Chengliang and the others were sitting cross-legged. As she took a step forward, she opened her mouth and said with a charming smile, "Your Highness the Sixth Prince, Ruwei knows she was wrong and has decided to turn over a new leaf and repent from now on. Your Highness, please show mercy." As soon as Tantai Ruwei spoke, Yu Chengliang's slightly closed eyes suddenly opened with a swish. Although she was talking to him, her footsteps were walking towards Du Xiaofu. Yu Chengliang's heart suddenly rose to his throat. This woman, what is she trying to do? A myriad of thoughts flashed through Yu Chengliang's mind. He was completely unable to figure out what the other party was thinking. Such a scene could not make Yu Chengliang not feel nervous. But he had to complete the act. He suppressed the fear in his heart and still put on a calm appearance. He said, "A prodigal who repents is worth more than gold. It's good that you've thought it through. This prince promises you that when this matter is over, I'll definitely plead with Imperial Father to pardon the death penalty of your divine war general's estate. Now, we still need to cultivate and break through here. Brother Du is also refining the chaotic energy. You can go to the side. Whether it's guarding or cultivating, you don't need to care about us." Yu Chengliang's eyelids drooped slightly as he spoke casually, but his back was covered in fine cold sweat, and his mind was connected to Tantai Ruwei from the beginning until the end, and he was observing her every move. Ha ha ha, Tantai Ruwei laughed once more. She was as happy as a hen that had just laid eggs. Her large eyes narrowed into slits. She stretched out a jade-white finger that was as white as a scallion root and pointed at the purple-robed youth beside Yu Chengliang. She said, "Ruwei has been at the peak of the seizing divinity stage for a long time. I plan to refine the chaotic energy in the near future and use it to break through to the severing truth stage. And this little brother beside your Highness the Sixth Prince is currently breaking through. Ruwei boldly wishes to sit beside him and freeload some primitive energy. Your Highness, please allow me. Although she was asking for Your Highness' permission, her footsteps didn't have any intention of stopping. She still walked step by step toward Du Xiaofu. Such a scene caused Yu Chengliang, Yu Chengyu, and He Zhibai's nerves to tighten. Tantai Rui's request clearly showed that she had seen through something. Otherwise, how could there be such a thing as taking advantage of the primordial qi? Humph. Tantai Rui, you are indeed very bold. Do you know the identity of the person beside this prince? You actually dare to have ideas about him. Extracting chaotic energy is the most dangerous. If you disturb him, not to mention this prince, even if my father comes forward, he won't be able to protect the safety of your divine General Xianzhan's estate. Yu Chengliang snorted coldly. His violent rage was completely evident. He glared angrily at Tantai Rui. He looked like he was just short of jumping up and pointing at her nose to berate her. But at this time, how could Tantai Rui fall for this trick? She was almost certain that she had been played like a monkey by this sixth prince all along. Otherwise, she would have taken the risk and done this. There was absolutely no reason for that expert hiding in the shadows to not show himself. Ha ha ha. Your Highness, the sixth prince, what time is it now? You're still playing with Rui like a fool. Tantai Rui's laughter was endless. She was absolutely a woman with boundless charm. She didn't stop and continued. Actually, Rui really wants to know the identity of this person beside you to actually be able to make Your Highness the sixth prince willingly stand guard for him. Most importantly, he actually has the ability to rescue all of you from Daishuanjin, Helianshang, and the others. This is absolutely not something an ordinary person can do. Her beautiful eyes stared fixedly at Yu Chengliang once more. This time, she finally saw the change in his expression. In this way, Tantai Rui was even more certain that her guess wasn't wrong. The reason those people from the Divine General's estate failed was surely because of this kid before her. Tantai Rui, is this the attitude you use to admit your mistake? If that's the case, then you can stake it all on one throw. But don't blame this prince for not warning you when the time comes. How could Yu Chengliang be willing to give up like this? He continued to use the Shadow Step fist all the way. Unfortunately, Tantai Rui didn't fall for this trick anymore. She said with a light smile, "It's fine if Your Highness doesn't admit it, but this person is currently tempering his chaotic energy and can't be disturbed by the outside world. Otherwise, he'll face the danger of death at any moment." She pursed her red lips and said, in other words, he can't even protect himself now, let alone have the ability to take care of all of you. So, Your Highness the sixth prince, don't continue acting in front of me. Do you really think Rui is so easy to deceive? Tantai Rui, since it's like this, then this prince can only give you a word of advice. Disasters can be defied, but disasters brought on by oneself are the hardest to bear. You're up to yourself to choose. Yu Chengliang said with a sigh. He seemed to have lost his last trace of patience with the woman before him, but his heart was already indescribably perturbed. All his feints had been seen through by her, and he had nowhere to hide. It made him lose his mind and didn't know how to deal with it. Since Your Highness said I'm up to myself, then Rui will follow my heart and boldly give it a try. As Tantai Rui spoke, the smile on her face abruptly vanished. Then, her forward speed suddenly increased explosively, and she flashed straight towards Du Xiaofu, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground. At the same time, an enormous rumbling sound came from the bottom of the lake, as if the end of the world had come. An incomparably resplendent bolt of lightning descended from the sky like a pillar that reached the heavens, and it struck down towards the purple-robed young man. As soon as this bolt of lightning appeared, it blasted open a huge black hole in the void. The lake water roiled and quickly retreated far away, and it swept up an earth-shattering wave that roared ferociously. Such a scene caused Yu Chengliang, He Zhibai, and Yu Chengyu to feel like their guts were about to split apart, and their souls were about to leave their bodies. If it was at any other time, then with Brother Du's strength, it wouldn't be difficult for him to receive this attack of Tantai Rui's. But at this moment, he was refining chaotic origin energy. Everyone knew that chaotic origin energy was something that existed since the beginning of the world. and the people of the current world could only condense boundless desolation chi and purify it to obtain chaotic origin energy. However, this process was extremely dangerous. The violent aura was capable of annihilating a person's body and soul core in an instant. To a cultivator, when refining chaos energy, they absolutely could not be disturbed by the outside world. Otherwise, no one would be able to endure the consequences they would face. Meanwhile, Tantai Rue didn't make a move against them but directly charged towards Brother Du instead, causing Yu Chengliang and the others to be practically scared out of their wits. Tantai Rue, how dare you? Yu Chengliang shouted out explosively. He didn't have to think at all before he flew out to directly face the terrifying pillar of lightning. Amongst the people present, besides He Jixin who'd lost the ability to fight, his strength was the strongest. But it was absolutely not easy for Yu Chengliang to forcefully resist this attack of Tantai Rue's. His figure suddenly shook as a vast aura effused out, and a terrifying pressure descended as if the sky was collapsing. In the surroundings, the lake was seething while the mountain range was trembling. Waves of earthen yellow light floated around Yu Chengliang's body, condensing into an incomparably majestic illusory mountain peak. It carried an incomparably heavy aura as it blocked the top of Du Xiaofu's head at the critical moment. Your Highness the Sixth Prince, you're really overestimating your ability. But even though your strength isn't really great, you're really good at deceiving others. Tantai Rue's beautiful brows knit together as she spoke indifferently. Her figure soared into the sky and stood in midair. Her delicate body was wrapped in a large amount of lightning, making her look like a goddess in the world, radiant and transcendent. Under her control, the terrifying pillar of lightning directly bombarded the phantom of the mountain above Yu Chengliang's head without dodging. Boom! As soon as the two collided, an earth-shaking sound erupted, deafening even the apathetic. The huge pillar of lightning was invincible. Suddenly, it shattered Yu Chengliang's phantom of the mountain into dense earthen yellow runes that fluttered in the void. During this process, the thunderbolts were constantly being consumed. But in the end, when the phantom of the mountain completely disappeared, there was still no less than 30% of the energy that continued to bombard Du Xiaofu's head. Not good, sixth brother. Retreat quickly. Not far away, Yu Chengyu shouted loudly. She immediately shot out a light shadow, which was like a continuous mountain range, spreading out in the void. It also carried a heavy aura. This was the profound meaning of Earth. But compared to the law technique that Yu Chengliang used, the little princess's move was too weak. Tanai Rue, my divine General Zihong's estate will never let you off. He Jibai also came to his senses. He waved his hand, creating a sky full of raging flames that merged with the little princess's attack. Together, they struck towards the remaining fierce lightning beam. Qilok Tantai Rue's cultivation had already reached the perfect stage of the seizing god stage. Like Du Xiaofu, she also had a complete law of lightning. Once she used it, even if He Jibai, Yu Chengliang, and Yu Chengyu joined forces, they would absolutely be no match for her. The light shadow of the mountain and the raging flames lingered, but as soon as they came into contact, they were violently torn apart. The energy on the pillar of lightning was not reduced by much. It directly bombarded down and landed on Du Xiaofu's head. At the same time, Du Xiaofu, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground, also felt great danger and suddenly opened his eyes. However, before he could do anything, the lightning struck his body. Everyone in the field only heard a soft, puff sound, and the sound of a body bursting was heard. Then, in the eyes of several people, they saw Du Xiaofu's head was broken open. A crack appeared and quickly spread down like a spider web, making Du Xiaofu's body look like porcelain covered with cracks. Then, they saw an extremely ferocious aura coming from the cracks on Du Xiaofu's body. Strange rays of light suddenly appeared, emitting a dazzling light. What followed was a bang. The light was 100 times more dazzling than the sun, causing He Jibai and the others to unconsciously reach out to cover their eyes. Brother Du. When the light dissipated, the first thing He Jibai did was to look at the place where Du Xiaofu was sitting cross-legged. At this time, he did not see the figure of the purple-robed youth again. The only thing he could see was a pile of minced meat on the ground, as well as the purple-gold blood that was scattered all over the ground, emitting a dazzling light. Ah! This scene caused Hijibai's heart to suffer a heavy blow. His eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. He raised his head and roared, his hair flying wildly. Brother Du, how could this be? Yu Chengliang and Yu Chengyu were also stunned. Their lips trembled, unwilling to accept the reality in front of them. Especially Hijibai. His heart was filled with an uncontrollable sorrow. Ever since they met, as his understanding of Du Xiaofu deepened, he had a true brotherly relationship with this purple-robed youth who came from a small world. Especially in the divine wilderness Heavenlock formation, he used his own strength to contend against the joint forces of the four divine generals' estate, and forcibly rescued the sixth prince and the little princess from the encirclement of hundreds of people. Although the three of them did not say anything, their hearts were indescribably grateful to him. Yet now, they'd actually watched helplessly as Du Xiaofu died before their eyes, and his body was slashed apart by a single strike from Tantai Ruwei. At the same time, the small wisp of primal chaos chi that he refined in his body also erupted at this time, tearing him into pieces. The three of them found it difficult to accept such an outcome. Jibai, your highnesses, quickly leave. I will stop Tantai Ruwei. At this time, Hijishin also woke up. Although she did not know the identity of the purple-robed youth, she knew that their relationship was not shallow from the expressions of the people in front of her. However, her strength was greatly damaged, and she simply could not save him in time. Hijishin transmitted her voice to the three of them, and then silently closed her beautiful eyes. Her pale and bloodless lips began to tremble as she muttered, "Sister, don't." Hijibei turned to look and was once again frightened out of his wits. He immediately screamed, "Forbidden curse! This is the dark fire withering soul curse of the divine general Zihong estate. Quickly stop her." Yu Chengliang also discovered this situation at the first moment. He immediately roared and pounced toward Hijishin. In fact, there was no need for his reminder. Hijibai had already rushed toward his grandmother and wanted to stop her. They were very clear that the dark fire withering soul curse was the forbidden technique of the divine general's estate. It had unfathomable power. Once it was used, it was at the cost of burning one's divine soul and being burned by the hellfire in exchange for the most domineering power that surpassed one's peak strength to fight against the enemy. However, the final result was the destruction of the primordial spirit, the physical body being seized by the evil spirit, and the loss of one's nature, turning into the most ferocious killing machine. To put it bluntly, it was falling into the devil's path, and there was only endless killing left in its eyes. For ordinary people, unless it was a last resort, no one was willing to use the dark fire withering soul curse. No one was willing to be seized by the evil spirit and become the most ferocious devil in the world. If Hijishin was here by herself, then she would rather die at Tantai Ruwei's hands than execute such a forbidden technique. However, at this time, if she made this choice, Hijibai, Yu Chengliang, and Yu Chengyu would not be able to leave this place alive. They would all be killed by Tantai Ruwei. Chapter 2735. Translator. H2 Mr. In order to save her brother, the sixth prince, and the little princess, Hijishin had no choice but to make the most resolute choice. Soon, as the corners of Hijishin's lips trembled, an indescribable charm rose from her body and emitted a strange fluctuation that spread out in the surrounding space. Strings of cryptic and incomprehensible words were lightly spat out from her mouth, as if they could stir up the netherworld and make an exchange with the most ferocious evil spirits and devils. Subsequently, a scalp-numbing aura spread out and brazenly struck Hijibai and Yu Chengliang, who were pouncing towards her, and sent them flying. Huff! A dark flame gushed out and covered Hijishin's exquisite body. It was suffused with a dark color, as if a netherworld fire was burning. Not only did it not have a blazing aura, but it instead carried a boundless coldness that was indescribably awe-inspiring. PFFF. Hijibai and Yu Chengliang had already suffered great injuries when they forcefully resisted Tantai Ruwei's attack. At this moment, They were repelled by Hijishin's power, which caused a huge shock. The two of them were sent flying and fiercely fell to the ground, each spitting out a mouthful of blood. At this moment, Yu Chengyu, who was standing to the side, had already lost her mind and completely didn't know what to do. With her strength, she simply couldn't go forward and stop all of this. Could it be that she could only watch helplessly as Hijishin's soul was swallowed by the netherworld ruthless fire and ultimately become a body that could only kill people? She actually used this heaven-defying forbidden technique. Not far away, Tantai Rui's expression changed greatly, and her charming face turned pale. This forbidden technique was also a top-secret existence in the divine General Zihong's estate. Ordinary people simply couldn't come into contact with it, and there were endless legends in the outside world. Of course, the people of the divine General Xianzhan's estate knew about this legend, but Tantai Rui didn't expect Hijishin to actually cultivate this vicious and treacherous forbidden technique. Tantai Rui knew very well that if she was allowed to continue, then not to mention a cultivator at the seizing divinity realm like herself, even an ordinary cultivator at the truth-severing realm would probably be annihilated in the end. Since you're courting death and aren't willing to surrender, I'll grant you your wish. Tantai Rui didn't dare dally, and she shouted delicately before flying out to attack Hijishin. As she moved forward, she waved her hand, and her elegant palace dress swayed in the void. Bolts of lightning swept out from her body, turning into ferocious and domineering giant dragons that attacked directly. These dragons carried an extremely bright light, and at the same time, an unparalleled ferocious aura. As they twisted their bodies and flew, terrifying cracks appeared in the void. In just a short moment, these lightning dragons arrived at Hijishin's position and wrapped around her body. They looked like ropes, tightly imprisoning her within. The domineering aura on the lightning dragons was ceaselessly released, and it rapidly consumed the dark flames outside Hijishin's body. But in only a short moment, the lightning dragons that coiled around Hijishin were completely frozen, and then they exploded with a bang and vanished into nothingness. However, at this moment, Tantai Rui's true body had arrived. She suddenly raised her fist and brazenly smashed it onto Hijishin's chest, causing her to be blasted flying. At the same time, scarlet blood flowed out from her mouth and nose. If you executed the nether flame withering soul curse a little earlier, then perhaps I would be fearful. But with your heavily injured and dying body now, I would be able to directly kill you before your forbidden curse is fully activated. Tantai Rui snorted coldly, and she swiftly chased after Hijishin without the slightest delay. Although she spoke casually, she didn't dare underestimate Hijishin in the slightest, and she strove to kill Hijishin as quickly as possible. Tantai Rui's figure was graceful. She seemed to be slow, but she was actually extremely swift, and in the blink of an eye, she punched out again. The lightning that filled the sky moved along with it, and in an instant, it wrapped around Hijishin once more. A resplendent palm of lightning formed in front of her, and it fiercely smashed down. Crackle! Half of the dark nether flame outside Hijishin's body was shaken by such a blow. Her chest caved in, and large mouthfuls of blood gushed out from her mouth. Her face became ashen, and her vitality seemed to be cut off. Tantai Rui's repeated attacks made the momentum that she had gathered with great difficulty by burning her origin spirit show signs of collapse. It didn't matter if she died, but if this continued, He Jibai, Yu Chengliang, and Yu Chengyu would absolutely not be able to escape today's killing trap. Jibai, Your Highness, quickly leave. Hijishin clenched her teeth and shouted. She swallowed the blood in her mouth, and her eyes were filled with stubbornness. She didn't care about her heavily injured body at all, and tried her best to burn her origin spirit even faster. Sister, don't. Quickly stop. How could he Jibai be obedient? He just collapsed on the ground and shouted himself hoarse. In fact, he knew very well that even if he escaped now, as long as his sister couldn't resist Tantai Rui, she would still fall into her hands in the end. Hijishin, all of this is your own choice. If you had surrendered earlier, I could have spared your life. Moreover, I probably wouldn't have found the sixth prince and the little princess all of a sudden. As Tantai Rui spoke, her peach eyes, which were usually filled with smiles, were now filled with sternness. She let out a shout, and the void above her shattered and collapsed in an instant. An incomparably ferocious lightning beam shot out from the void crack, and as if it was going to destroy the world, it directly attacked Hijishin's head. This was her strongest attack, and she used all of her strength in order to kill in one blow. Tantai had sufficient confidence that even if Hijishin had executed the nether flame withering soul curse, so long as her soul hadn't been completely burned away, then her heavily injured body would be directly obliterated by this domineering strike. Rumble. Thunder rumbled. The space shook, and the earth moved. Under the influence of the terrifying power, the mountain range at the bottom of the lake in the distance trembled, and the mountain tops directly collapsed, turning into piles of stones. In the end, I still can't stop her? Looking at this scene, Hijishin's eyes were filled with despair. At this time, there was indescribable regret in her heart. She could only blame herself for being so stubborn before. After being seriously injured by Tantai sneak attack, she didn't choose to compromise, and instead fought all the way to this place. It was also because of this that her younger brother and the two princes and princesses were exposed in front of Tantai. Moreover, the talented purple-robed young man had already died in the hands of the other party. Now, she couldn't change all of this even if she used the forbidden spell. It seems that I can only self-destruct, Hijishin thought in her heart, and could only figure out this solution. However, she was also very hesitant. If Hijibai and Yu Qingliang were not far away, the energy from her self-destruction could also kill them. This was definitely not the result she wanted. However, at this point, there was no better choice. Jibai, Your Highness, Princess, don't blame me. Clear tears silently slid out from the corners of Hijishin's eyes. She couldn't bear it, but the look in her eyes became firmer little by little. She quickly raised the remaining qi in her body, drew on the power of her origin spirit, and prepared to self-destruct. In the end, she couldn't escape death. Hijibai, Yu Qingliang, and Yu Chengyu were the same. Instead of letting Tantai have her way, it was better to drag her down to hell with them and let them perish together. However, just when Hijishin was about to make the final attack, an unusually domineering aura suddenly rose up in the field. It was like a heavy hammer that suddenly struck everyone's chests. Hijishin's movements also slowed down a little under this aura. At the same time, the space in front of her silently burst open and a gap appeared. An incomparably dazzling light rose up from within, and it was so dazzling that Hijishin couldn't even open her eyes again. As soon as this light appeared, it directly soared into the sky like a pillar that appeared out of thin air, and it shot towards the sky. What followed was the rumbling of thunder that shook the entire universe. After a loud rumble, this light pillar collided with Tantai lightning palm. After the two equally domineering forces collided, they immediately shattered and transformed into a large expanse of dense lightning runes. They flew up in the sky and set off an extremely terrifying lightning storm that annihilated everyone in the field. Tantai, who was at the center of the energy, had retreated at the first moment, but she still suffered a huge shock, and her mind was in a trance for a long time. It wasn't until a long time later that the lightning storm finally passed that she gradually recovered her senses. Her ears were still buzzing as if there were millions of mosquitoes dancing around her ears. At this moment, her palace dress was shattered and turned into strips of cloth that hung on her body. Many places revealed her jade-white skin, and some deep areas were even faintly discernible. However, Tantai didn't care about her sorry appearance at all. She just emitted the power of her origin spirit and constantly probed everything in the surroundings, wanting to know what had happened. Until now, she still hadn't found out who had made a move and blocked her attack. But thinking about it, Hijishin should have been directly crushed into powder in the violent energy storm, and Hijibai, the sixth prince, and the little princess probably couldn't escape the fate of death. You actually also mastered the complete law of lightning. You're really not weak. At this moment, a man's voice drifted over and drilled into Tantai ears. She quickly turned around and saw a purple-robed young man strolling over on the lake behind her. Seeing this figure, Tantai Ruwei unconsciously opened her eyes wide, and her rosy lips opened into a circle. How? How could it be you? You actually didn't die. This is impossible. No matter what, she didn't dare believe what she saw with her eyes. She only felt that she seemed to be hallucinating. Wasn't the purple-robed young man who was walking towards her step by step the same person who was refining the chaotic origin chi before being blasted into pieces by her lightning pillar? Tanai Ruwei couldn't figure out how this guy could come back to life. She clearly saw that the other party had been smashed into pieces. Under the attack of the power of lightning and violent chaotic origin chi, it was impossible for him to be lucky enough to survive. Nothing is impossible. Du Xiaofu replied indifferently, and then said, "You actually dared to attack me when I wasn't paying attention, so you have to pay the corresponding price. Although I rarely attack women today, I absolutely won't let you off so easily." His voice was very soft, and there wasn't much fluctuation in his tone, but the killing intent hidden in it was not the slightest bit weaker than usual. He naturally knew everything that had happened before. When Tantai Ruwei attacked him, Du Xiaofu had already become vigilant. However, because he couldn't react in time, he was struck by such a blow. Coupled with the chaotic energy in his body going berserk at that time, his body was directly minced into pieces. However, he had the indestructible profound body. Even if his body was crushed into powder, as long as it wasn't completely destroyed, he could quickly reform it again. It was precisely because of this that he was able to make a move at the most critical moment for He Jixin and block Tantai Ruwei's killing move for her. Moreover, with the help of the miraculous rising wave, he even rescued He Jibai, He Jixin, Yu Chengliang, and Yu Chengyu and placed them in the desolate ancient space. "I don't know where you came from, but I'm afraid you can't make me pay the price with your strength." Tantai Ruwei calmed down and began to weigh the situation before her. According to her guess, although the purple-robed young man before her had inexplicably come back to life, he must have suffered significant injuries. The strength that he could exert now was absolutely not stronger than her. As long as the other party hadn't broken through to the true severing stage, wanting to kill her was tantamount to a fantasy. "Whether you can do it or not, then come and try." Du Xiaofu's words gradually became extremely icy cold, and his gaze was fierce as he looked at the peerlessly beautiful woman opposite him. As he spoke, a peerless might that dominated the heavens and the earth surged from his body, and numerous hand seals were swiftly condensed out by him. Subsequently, a void 8 trigrams diagram occupied the space above his head, and it flickered with light, and even Tantai Ruwei's figure was enveloped within it. Below this 8 trigrams diagram, numerous bolts of lightning coiled around and emitted a terrifying and overbearing aura. Beneath Du Xiaofu's feet, there were flames rising from the ground, thick earth suppressing the world, mountains and rivers evolving, rivers taking form, ancient trees towering into the sky, and it played out the state of everything in the world. Numerous strong winds swept out and whistled through the sky. The space outside Du Xiaofu's body rippled with a shapeless fluctuation, and it formed an absolute overlord's domain. As soon as he made a move, he executed his strongest ability. The true meaning of numerous laws evolved and intertwined with each other, and it contained a boundless momentum that crushed down towards Tantai Ruwei. So strong. He actually fused several types of laws into one. What kind of ability is this? The shock in Tantai Ruwei's heart was enormous, and her eyes revealed astonishment. As a powerful force in the Yu Qing Divine Kingdom, the divine General Xian Zhan's estate that she belonged to absolutely didn't have such an overbearing ability to fuse several types of laws. Could it be that this young man came from one of the 36 Holy Lands? Otherwise, how could he have such terrifying strength? At this moment, Tantai Ruwei felt unprecedentedly solemn. But before she had time to think, she saw the purple-robed young man's hand seal change, and it carried a terrifying bolt of lightning that directly struck down towards her. "Kill." Tantai Ruwei wouldn't wait for death. She immediately shouted and also struck out a dazzling bolt of lightning to meet Du Xiaofu's attack. Rumble. Thunder rumbled, and the world shook. Both of them were complete controllers of the law of lightning, and with a casual move, they carried the momentum of heaven and earth. In an instant, this area was directly annihilated by the light of lightning. A huge whirlpool was directly swept out from the bottom of the lake, and it carried an earth-shattering force. The eye of the whirlpool was extremely large, and it went all the way to the surface of the lake, revealing the clear sky. After the attack, the two bolts of lightning entangled with each other and consumed each other. In the end, they were annihilated into nothingness at the same time. Tanai Rui shouted in a clear voice and immediately left Du Xiaofu. Her figure flashed out from the bottom of the lake, and she flashed into midair before floating in midair. Seeing this, Du Xiaofu also shook his body, and the great Pong golden wings on his back flapped rapidly. In an instant, he caught up with the other party's footsteps. The huge 8 trigrams diagram, as well as the large expanse of heavenly lightning and earthly fire, and mountains and rivers, all flew out of the lake together with his movements and shrouded the high sky. Heavenly lightning and earthly fire, subjugate the heavens. These words came out of Du Xiaofu's mouth. His hand seal changed, and the 8 trigrams in the void spun rapidly, transforming into a phantom image. Rumble! Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh! Thunder roared and earthly fire raged, and each transformed into a long dragon that rushed out from above Du Xiaofu's head and under his feet. In the process of moving forward, the heavenly lightning dragon and the heavenly fire dragon directly intertwined and condensed into one, transforming into an even more terrifying dragon. It spat out a blazing and domineering aura, causing the void to seem as if it was burned through, and handfuls of ashes sprinkled down from the sky. This heavenly lightning fire dragon opened its huge fangs and suddenly bit towards Tantai Rui. Lightning panic, heavenly might is overwhelming. Tantai Rui also shouted. With a wave of her delicate hand, the world seemed to boil, and dense lightning appeared out of thin air, appearing around Du Xiaofu's heavenly lightning fire dragon. These two people were the top powerhouses of the younger generation, and the gap between the two of them was not huge in terms of cultivation. The scene of the two powerhouses fighting was indescribably terrifying. Rumble, 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 rumble. Under the influence of Tantai Rui's power of law, this area instantly turned into a sea of lightning, boiling uncontrollably. Roar! The heavenly lightning fire dragon roared, and its voice resounded through the 9 heavens, shattering the void. The countless bolts of lightning in the surroundings were directly shattered by such a loud roar, but more and more bolts of lightning continued to pounce, surrounding the heavenly lightning fire dragon, and a fierce consumption between them began to occur. Roar! The dragon's roar shook the void, causing the surrounding mountains and rivers to crack, the earth to collapse, and the lake water to surge. The huge, heavenly lightning fire dragon twisted its body, and its huge tail swept in all directions. With a domineering momentum, it directly broke open a huge gap in the surrounding sea of lightning. Chapter 2736. Under the cooperation of the two laws, the might of the dragon of lightning and fire absolutely surpassed Tantai Rui's sea of lightning. An enormous gap was torn open, and the dragon of lightning and fire broke through the violent waves of rebirth energy. It was as if the clouds had been dispelled to reveal the sun, and it appeared before Tantai Rui. Shit! Tantai Rui cursed in her heart, but she didn't have the time to react before she was struck by the dragon's tail. Her delicate figure was sent flying like a shooting star. Under the enormous impact, a mouthful of blood sprayed out from her mouth and pierced through the void. At the same time, the shattered palace dress on her chest was burned by the raging flames, revealing 2 balls of pure white tenderness. How can a cultivator at the perfection stage of the seizing divinity stage be so strong? Tanai Rui couldn't believe it. She immediately had the intention to retreat, and she borrowed the force of her flying to flee swiftly towards the distance. Want to flee? Do you think you can escape from me? Du Xiaofu's gaze moved slightly, and the golden rock wings behind him flapped rapidly. He activated the rising wind style, and his figure suddenly vanished on the spot. In the next instant, his figure appeared on Tantai Rui's path of escape and intercepted her. Such a scene caused Tantai Rui to be utterly unable to make any effective reaction, and Du Xiaofu directly approached her. At the same time, a strand of invisible and mighty force suddenly descended and fiercely suppressed her body, causing her to seem as if she'd fallen into a quagmire. Her speed suddenly decreased, and even the movements of her limbs became abnormally stiff. Such a sudden situation caused Tantai Ruwei to turn pale with fright, and unconcealable astonishment appeared on her delicate face. Spatial laws. This is the spatial domain. Her knowledge was naturally extraordinary, and she instantly saw through Du Xiaofu's methods. There was no need to think any further. Her entire body erupted with boundless light, and the energy of lightning was vast and mighty as she intended to struggle free. Stay here obediently, you can't escape. Du Xiaofu snorted lightly. How could he possibly allow her to leave? This woman had tried to kill him. Before Tantai Ruwei truly erupted, Du Xiaofu controlled the absolute hegemony domain and firmly suppressed her. Then, he opened up the ancient, desolate space and instantly enveloped it. Swoosh! The pitch-black spatial hole vanished, and Du Xiaofu's figure vanished along with Tantai Ruwei. The area instantly quieted down. Only the endless lightning energy was still swirling in the void, whistling through the air. In the desolate ancient space, He Jibai, Yu Chengliang, Yu Chengyu, and the others opened their eyes the moment Tantai Ruwei fell in. Their complexions had recovered quite a bit in this environment of time, but they were still seriously injured. They had been cultivating and adjusting their breathing. As for He Jixin, who was the most heavily injured, she was currently in a coma due to her casting of the Hellfire Withering Soul Curse and then being forcefully interrupted. There were dozens of subordinates from Divine General Zi Hong's mansion and the royal family of Holy Kingdom who were treating her injuries. Brother Du Yu Chengliang, He Jibai, and the others all revealed joyful smiles when they saw Du Xiaofu come in. They originally thought that the purple-robed young man was dead, and they felt deeply guilty. The reason why Tantai Ruwei attacked was because of them. However, no one would have thought that at the most critical moment, when their hearts were filled with despair, Du Xiaofu, who was supposed to be dead in their eyes, would suddenly come back to life. Furthermore, he even saved them and brought them into the desolate ancient space. This made them feel extremely happy. However, they were also very puzzled. That guy's means were probably too shocking. Under the dual effects of the thunderbolt power and the chaotic origin chi, a person whose body was shattered could still stand in front of them in perfect condition. What kind of power was needed to do this? Did he really come from a small world? He Jibai could not help but have such doubts in his heart. This woman can't escape. If you have any questions, interrogate her properly. Looking at their expressions, Du Xiaofu gave an understanding smile and said softly, "Don't worry." In fact, the sixth prince and the little princess had suffered several mishaps, but they still did not know what had happened. Now that a young miss of the Divine General's mansion was captured, they naturally needed to interrogate her properly. Tantai Ruwei, this prince will give you one more chance. Tell me your purpose, and I will consider not killing you. Yu Chengliang stood up, walked to Tantai Ruwei with shaky steps, and asked coldly, "Ha?" Tantai Ruwei lay on the ground in a sorry state. She just smiled indifferently and did not answer. She stretched out her hand and pulled a piece of torn cloth to cover her skin. At this time, you still want to resist stubbornly? Yu Chengliang did not have any intention of showing mercy to the fair sex. He stepped forward and pulled Tantai Ruwei up. The tattered cloth in front of him once again fell down, and a white luster appeared in the air. But Yu Chengliang obviously did not have the mood to appreciate this moving scenery. He just looked at her fiercely. "Give up. Even if I die, I won't say anything." Tantai Ruwei gritted her teeth. As a prisoner, she did not make any resistance. The most important reason was that when she had just entered this place, there was a mysterious power that immediately suppressed her body and sealed all her power. Yu Chengliang was extremely angry. He pushed Tantai Ruwei away and threw her to the ground. Tantai Ruwei did not seem to care about this. Her face regained some of its usual calmness and composure. She looked at Du Xiaofu and asked, "I'm very curious. With your strength, you definitely have an extraordinary origin. Now that I can't escape from your control, can you dispel my doubts? What is your identity?" She looked at Du Xiaofu without moving as she wanted to hear the answer. But to her disappointment, Du Xiaofu wasn't interested in answering this question, and he said instead, I don't have so much time to waste here with you, and I absolutely won't not kill you just because you're a woman. If you're sensible, then tell me the truth so as to avoid me making a move against you. At that time, the consequences you face will probably be even more unbearable than death. Du Xiaofu's voice was icy cold as he spoke in a neither fast nor slow manner. Ha ha ha. Tantai Ruwei laughed delicately once more, and then her laughter stopped abruptly as she squeezed out two words from the cracks between her teeth. I have no comment. Her gaze was firm while her tone was resolute. After she finished speaking, she turned around and paid no further attention to Du Xiaofu before closing her eyes. You chose this yourself, so don't blame me for being ruthless. Du Xiaofu snorted lightly, and then he didn't hesitate in the slightest to suddenly press his palm on top of Tanai Ruwei's head. The soul-searching art was activated, and waves of terrifying energy were emitted from his body and ceaselessly drilled into the woman's mind before covering her soul. Ah! Tantai Ruwei let out a shrill scream that contained indescribable pain. What is Brother Du doing? Seeing such a scene, Hijibai was slightly puzzled. Brother Du should be utilizing soul techniques to search Tantai Ruwei's memories. Yu Chengliang thought for a moment before answering. Hijibai came to a sudden understanding when he heard this, and then he didn't speak anymore and just waited with Yu Chengliang. As time passed, waves of strange fluctuations emerged from Du Xiaofu's body, causing the nearby people to feel their souls tremble. The soul-searching art could be considered as a method of utilizing the profundities of the soul, but it couldn't be considered as the energy of the laws. However, under such a wondrous application, the information contained in a living being's soul could be completely seen through. If it was an expert who majored in the laws of the soul, they could even seriously injure Du Xiaofu under such a method. Unfortunately, Tantai Ruwei wasn't among them. Not long after, Du Xiaofu's slightly closed eyes slowly opened, and his palm moved away from Tantai Ruwei's head. Thump! Tantai Ruwei seemed to have gone through the cruelest punishment in the world, and there was no trace of blood on her face. She directly collapsed to the ground and fainted, no longer making any sound. Yu Chengliang, Hijibai, and Yu Chengyu all looked at Du Xiaofu, hoping that he would tell them the information he found. However, at this moment, Du Xiaofu didn't speak for a long time and stood in place in a daze. After a while, he muttered in a low voice, seeming very excited, 2 old friends are actually in the Yuqing Divine Kingdom. What a coincidence. That's right, when Du Xiaofu searched Tantai Ruwei's memories, he saw 2 familiar yet somewhat unfamiliar figures. These 2 figures were Du Xiaofu's old friends, the ancient ancestor of the Bai Feng Divine Bird Clan and the ancient emperor of the human race's Divine Temple. Such a discovery made it difficult for him to hide his excitement. As early as in the tomb of Heavenly Tao, after the turmoil between the Beast Alliance and the human race had subsided, the 2 of them broke through the barrier of the world force with the power of the consummate saint stage and went to the outside world. At that time, they were already at the end of their lives and couldn't live for too long. So they planned a shocking action to remove the tumors in their respective clans. Du Xiaofu, on the other hand, had inadvertently helped the 2 of them. As a result, the 2 old fellows who had been scheming behind the scenes had solved everything without even showing their faces from the beginning to the end. When Du Xiaofu found out about this, he almost went berserk, saying that the older the ginger, the spicier the spicier. However, after the 2 of them left, no one knew if there would be a day when they would meet again. At that time, no one understood the situation in the outside world at all, and no one knew about the existence of the 33 heavens. They thought that when they left, it was likely to be an eternal farewell. Who would have thought that in Tantai Ruwei's memories, they were actually still alive in this world? This made Du Xiaofu extremely happy. Most importantly, they were also in the Yuqing Divine Kingdom and were very close to the imperial family. Presumably, Hijibai and Yu Chengliang were no strangers to them either. Du Xiaofu thought that if this news was sent back to the divine martial world, Du Xiaoqing would probably be overjoyed. The ancient ancestor of the Bai Feng clan was her sister. Brother Du, seeing Du Xiaofu in a daze, Hijibai, who was beside him, called out softly, I'm fine. Du Xiaofu smiled slightly, and then his expression became serious. He told Yu Chengliang, He Jibai, and the others everything he knew. After Yu Chengliang and Yu Chengyu heard this, their expressions changed drastically, and they muttered in disbelief, "No, this is impossible. How could how could he die?" After Du Xiaofu told them, they finally knew that there were a total of 7 divine generals' mansions involved in this rebellion. Other than the Taishu Divine General's Mansion, Yuan Ding Divine General's Mansion, Xian Huang Divine General's Mansion, Nia Huang Divine General's Mansion, Xianzhan Divine General's Mansion, and Yin He Divine General's Mansion, there was also the Zhongluan Divine General's Mansion. In this way, only the Zihong Divine General's Mansion, Diwu Divine General's Mansion, and Yunling Divine General's Mansion were still loyal to the imperial family. There were a total of 10 Divine Generals' Mansions in the Yuqing Holy Kingdom. This time, 7 Divine Generals' Mansions had joined forces and wanted to rebel. This made people feel that the situation was extremely serious. The reason for this huge rebellion was that the Divine Emperor of the Holy Kingdom had died. However, from Tantai Rui's memory, this information was strictly sealed by insiders. Not many people knew about it, except for a few people in the imperial family. Even the princes and princesses did not know about it. However, Du Xiaofu did not find out how such a top-secret information had reached the ears of the 7 Divine Generals' Mansions. The Yuqing Divine Emperor's soul flame has been extinguished, which caused the Divine Generals' Mansions to join forces with evil intentions. It seems that this matter is going to be troublesome. Du Xiaofu frowned and started to think. At the beginning, he did not want to get involved in this matter, but he was helplessly involved time and time again. He killed Dai Xuanjun, Zhong Su, Wang Qishuan, and the others. This time, he even captured Tantai Rui. It could be said that he was already on the opposite side of the 7 Divine Generals' Mansions. There was no turning back. At this time, Du Xiaofu realized that he had to get involved in this matter. This was because the ancient ancestor Bifong and the ancient emperor of the human race had a high status in the Holy Kingdom. They were very close to the imperial family and were the 2 divine envoys under the divine emperor. Moreover, they had been in the supreme Changrong heaven for many years. At this time, their cultivation had reached the true severing realm, which was quite extraordinary. The 7 Divine Generals' Mansions joined forces to overthrow the rule of the Yuqing Holy Kingdom and establish a new Holy Kingdom. Naturally, they could not avoid attacking the 2 of them. Du Xiaofu absolutely would not allow such a situation to happen. The only thing that he did not understand was why the Yuqing Divine Emperor would look at the 2 of them differently with their cultivation and give them such a high status from the small world. No matter what, I should get out of this origin space as soon as possible to prevent more accidents from happening. Du Xiaofu did not want to think about things that he could not figure out. He felt that the situation was urgent. Although from Tantai Rui's memories, the rebellion of the 7 Divine Generals' Mansions had not really started yet, Du Xiaofu did not dare to let his guard down. If there were any accidents, the ancient ancestor of the Bifong Divine Bird Clan and the ancient emperor of the human race would be in great danger. Although their status was high, they were not very strong. They had only just reached the true severing realm. As for the 2 old friends, they had helped Du Xiaofu a lot in the past. Only by spreading the news here as soon as possible could the imperial family be prepared to deal with anything that might happen and disrupt the plans of the 7 Divine Generals' Mansions. Father, after a long time, Yu Chengliang and Yu Chengyu were still immersed in grief. This was especially so for the little princess. Her tears were like pearls from a broken necklace. The news of the Divine Emperor's death was a huge blow to them. 6th Prince, little princess, don't be too sad. He Jibai comforted them from the side. Even if my Divine General Zihong's mansion is exterminated, we will definitely do our best to stop the people from the 7 families who are plotting against us. He was very indignant. He felt endless anger towards the actions of the 7 Divine Generals' Mansions. Not to mention her loyalty to Scandinavia, just based on the fact that Tantai Rui attacked her sister and almost killed Du Xiaofu and the rest of them, it was already an irreconcilable outcome. There was no doubt that the disciples of the 7 Divine Generals' Mansions who had entered the origin space would not let them go while killing the princes and princesses. My father has always treated the 7 Divine Generals' Mansions well, But they actually did such a disgraceful thing. They should be killed. Yu Chengliang's eyes were red. He clenched his fists and gritted his teeth. This seems a little fishy. Suddenly, Du Xiaofu let out an inexplicable sound of surprise, as if he had figured out something unusual. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that this matter was not so simple. There was something fishy about it. Sixth Prince, let me ask you, do you really know nothing about your father's death? Du Xiaofu frowned slightly and asked such a question. Hearing this, Yu Chengliang shook his head and said, I haven't seen my father for a long time. He suddenly disappeared 3 years ago, and I don't know where he went. But who would have thought that he actually... At the end of his words, the sixth prince's face became gloomy again. Thinking that his father had already passed away, his heart was filled with endless sorrow. Originally, for the cultivators in the 33 heavens, it was common for them to go into seclusion for hundreds or thousands of years. For example, the flaming skeleton sitting not far away in the origin space had been trapped in the origin space for tens of thousands of years. Therefore, it was not strange that no one knew where the Divine Emperor had gone for 3 years. But in the end, he disappeared because his soul fire had been extinguished. This was unusual. With his powerful cultivation, something must have happened. Yu Chengliang even suspected that the 7 divine generals' mansions were behind all this. 3 years ago, Du Xiaofu touched his chin and asked again, at that time, didn't the two of you just become the divine envoys? Du Xiaofu told him about the situation of the ancient ancestor Bifeng and the ancient emperor of the human race. Yu Chengliang couldn't help but feel strange when he heard this question. They were just discussing about their imperial father. How did the topic suddenly change to the 2 divine envoys? Chapter 2737. Although Yu Chengliang was confused, he still answered Du Xiaofu's question honestly. After receiving his confirmation, the strange feeling in Du Xiaofu's heart became even stronger. Could it really be like this? He raised his eyebrows and felt that his guess was very likely. How could Du Xiaofu forget that the turmoil between the Beast Alliance and the Divine Temple back then was all orchestrated by those 2 old fellows? He had gone into hiding and pretended to be dead, causing the Beast Alliance and the Divine Temple to become enemies. Their goal was to force out the unstable elements like the Heavenly Flame Phoenix tribe and the Yu family. Combined with the Yu Qing Divine Emperor's trust in them and his mysterious disappearance, it was possible that they were behind all of this. Their intention was also to get rid of those who had ulterior motives in the Divine Kingdom. If it was really as Du Xiaofu thought, then those 2 old men were too good at jumping around. They didn't look the least bit like they did back then. Thinking of this, Du Xiaofu couldn't help but reveal a bitter smile. He then shook his head and said to Yu Chengliang and Yu Chengyu, don't be in such a hurry to be sad. Perhaps your father is still alive and well. The 6th prince and the little princess were stunned. Even He Jibai looked at Du Xiaofu strangely. They really couldn't understand why this guy would suddenly say something like this. One had to know that once the soul flame was extinguished, it would definitely result in death. According to Tantai Rui's memories, the Yu Qing Divine Emperor disappeared 3 years ago. His flame of the soul was only extinguished not long ago. Furthermore, it was immediately obtained by the 7 divine generals' residences, and they began to plan a shocking move. This matter really happened. If there wasn't a definite result, the divine generals' residences wouldn't take such a huge risk to kill the prince and princess in the origin space. Brother Du, you mean, suddenly? He Jibai seemed to have thought of something and asked in shock, could it be that someone did something to it? As soon as he said this, the 6th prince and the little princess were also shocked. I'm not sure about the specifics. It's just a guess, but the possibility is very high. Du Xiaofu nodded. We can only find out the truth after we leave the origin space. Brother Du, how did you know? He Jibai looked at him in disbelief and asked. In response, Du Xiaofu only smiled mysteriously and did not answer. In reality, it was only his own conjecture, and he didn't have any real evidence, so he naturally couldn't give the most definite answer. Seeing that he didn't speak, the others didn't pursue the matter. If that's the case, doesn't that mean that the rebellion of the 7 divine generals' manners was actually plotted against by someone? The little princess Yu Chengyu sniffled and wiped away the tears on her face. At this time, her mood underwent a great change. Knowing that her father was very likely still alive, she went from great sorrow to great joy. "You're right," Du Xiaofu replied with a smile. Ancient ancestor Bifong and the ancient emperor of the human race. These two old fellows were old monsters who had lived for countless years. It was very likely that they had plotted an unforeseen event to dig out the parasites hidden in the divine kingdom. It was just that they didn't know what methods they used to deceive the people of the seven divine generals' manners. This matter sounded simple, but to actually carry it out, they would have to face many difficult problems. "Brother Du, what should we do next?" Knowing this, He Jibai seemed to be filled with confidence. Since it was very likely that the divine emperor was plotting all this behind the scenes, then he definitely had a backup plan. He definitely wouldn't let the divine kingdom's rule be destroyed in the hands of the seven divine generals' manners. One could imagine that many things would definitely be arranged by him. It's still the same words. "Next, we'll create havoc in the origin space. The more muddy the waters, the better." Du Xiaofu paced and said seriously, "However, the first thing I need to do is to break through to the true severing stage. As long as I have enough strength, I can face any variables that may appear at any time." "Okay, we'll do as Brother Du says." Yu Chengliang nodded and said. In fact, Du Xiaofu wasn't absolutely sure. Things were just as he thought. But no matter what the situation was, increasing one's strength wouldn't be wrong. They didn't say any more nonsense and left the desolate ancient space one after another. Once again, they flew to the huge lake and plunged in. Du Xiaofu continued to refine the origin qi, while He Jibai, Yu Chengliang, and Yu Chengyu seized the time to cultivate. He Jibai and the little princess were at the peak of the virtual realm, only a step away from the seizing god realm. Under the endless desolate qi at the bottom of the lake, their breakthroughs would be very fast. So this time, it was the sixth prince's turn to guard, constantly vigilant of the surrounding movements, so as to prevent Du Xiaofu and the other two from being disturbed. But fortunately, everything was very peaceful this time, and no one came here again. In just 7 days, He Jibai made a huge breakthrough and became a seizing god realm expert. On the 15th day, Yu Chengyu also broke through the threshold and stepped into a brand new realm. However, Du Xiaofu didn't make any big movements in this half a month. Occasionally, his body would explode, and waves of desolate qi would be refined by him, turning into the purest origin qi, accumulating more and more. However, after 15 days, he had only accumulated a small amount, which was still far from the amount needed for a breakthrough. He Jibai and the others were very patient and kept waiting. Under such circumstances, more than 10 days passed. Finally, a huge sound came from the purple-robed young man sitting cross-legged on the ground. Rumble. Within Du Xiaofu's meridians, there seemed to be a primordial beast hibernating, emitting a ferocious roar that sounded like thunder. Under the gaze of He Jibai and the others, his skin undulated, as if there was qi flowing through it. "Brother Du, did you succeed in refining it?" Yu Chengliang's eyelids twitched, and he asked softly. A resplendent light was emitted from Du Xiaofu's body after his voice sounded, after which countless lightning bolts spat out. They appeared just like snakes on water as they flicked their tongues. At the same time, blazing flames surged out and spread out at the bottom of the lake, burning the surrounding space to the point of collapse. The lake water was also burned, turning into smoke. Brother Du is about to break through to the seizing truth realm. "This place is dangerous. Let's retreat a little further," He Jibai said, and then, together with Yu Chengliang and Yu Chengyu, quickly rushed into the distance. After they left, the changes in Du Xiaofu's body continued. Waves of powerful fluctuations were vast and mighty, causing the entire lake to shake violently. Those bolts of lightning and flames constantly revolved around Du Xiaofu's body. Not only that, but apart from the changes in the laws of lightning and the laws of fire, a unique domain had formed in this area. It was filled with a vast and majestic might, enveloping an area of over 100 kilometers and pushing out all existences. Roar. An earth-shaking roar reverberated in all directions, and the roar broke the void. Du Xiaofu's body glowed with golden light, and the red-bone horse monkey's primordial spirit rushed out on its own, carrying with it the power to destroy the world, suppressing the heaven and earth, domineering and unparalleled, transcending the world. The aura all over his body continued to rise, reaching an unprecedented level, powerful to the extreme. In reality, Du Xiaofu had already awakened from his comprehension, and all of this was under his control. After nearly a month of tempering, he had finally accumulated enough primal chaos energy and began to take steps towards the seizing truth realm. Primal chaos energy can help living beings step into the seizing truth realm because it contains the transformation of all things in this world and is the origin of all things. Everything in the world is derived from it. Du Xiaofu exclaimed as he continued to feel the uniqueness of the primal chaos energy. At this moment, he was experiencing a miraculous experience, as if he had become one with nature and everything in this world. He was in the most intimate contact with everything, and he could grasp countless invisible traces. This feeling was very similar to what he experienced when he controlled the heavenly path in the Shenwu world. However, at that time, Du Xiaofu could only control and use it, but he could not see through the true meaning behind it. This was akin to a cultivator of the sage realm obtaining a holy weapon and being able to unleash its full power. But on the other hand, he did not necessarily know the exact method of making this weapon, and he could not grasp the fundamentals of it. But now, with the help of the primal chaos energy, Du Xiaofu could truly feel the endless laws of heaven and earth and the mysteries of the universe. I mainly cultivate the laws of lightning and space. Not long ago, with the help of the blood flame lotus, I learned some techniques of the fire element. The power of laws in this world is divided into the 4 primal laws of time, space, matter, and soul. Which one should I focus on? Du Xiaofu could feel the traces of the 4 primal laws through this wisp of primal chaos energy, but he was the clearest about the 3 primal laws of space, lightning, and fire. He was a little hesitant, not knowing which law he should start with to cultivate. Speaking of which, his attainments in the laws of lightning were the most profound, and he had already reached a complete level. But the laws of lightning, if placed in the entire laws of matter, did not seem too eye-catching. In addition, the techniques he had grasped in the laws of space were more than any other techniques. It was just that the laws of space were one of the 4 primal laws, and it would be very difficult to completely comprehend them. Even immortal realm cultivators would not be able to do so. This choice made him feel a little awkward. Forget it. I'll just give it a try. After breaking through to the true severing realm, I'll have a chance to comprehend other laws. Du Xiaofu thought for a moment and immediately made a decision. He planned to give it a try first. He used his mind to control the heaven-earth pouch to open on its own, and then a jade bottle flew out. It directly exploded, and a drop of water as black as ink floated out. As soon as this drop of water appeared, it exuded a frightening and eerie aura, as if it was an item from hell, and it carried an extremely evil power. Through the underworld river weak water, I'll try to comprehend the laws of water. Condense. Du Xiaofu shouted softly in his mind. The power of his origin spirit rippled, and an invisible shock wave spread out, dispersing the underworld river weak water that he had plundered from Daishuanjin. It turned into a hazy black mist that enveloped his body. In an instant, an evil power spread out, rippling in the void. Primal chaos energy, fuse with me. Du Xiaofu controlled the primal chaos energy to circulate continuously in his body, absorbing this black mist. Then, in his perception, a strand of ferocious energy was mixed into the primal chaos energy in his body, revealing a valiant and cold aura. This was the power of the underworld river weak water, and it was also evolved from the primal chaos energy. At this moment, after being absorbed, a part of the power contained in the primal chaos energy was activated, and it became even stronger. Du Xiaofu could clearly sense some mysterious runes glowing. He seemed to be able to touch them, but those runes were extremely profound, and he could not fully comprehend them in a short period of time. Is this a part of the power of the laws of water? Du Xiaofu knew that these runes were the true meaning of the laws of water. If he could grasp them, his attainments in the laws of water would go from nothing to something, and he would make great progress. However, he could not fully comprehend them in a short period of time. This was because his foundation in the laws of water was zero. If he wanted to make a breakthrough, he would have to spend a lot of time to do so. This was not like when he refined the true spirit of the blood flame divine lotus. The true spirit of the blood flame divine lotus contained the ultimate interpretation of the laws of fire, and Du Xiaofu could directly comprehend it. I should make a breakthrough first and focus on the laws of space. Du Xiaofu felt that it was a pity. He had a big heart. Throughout the entire 33 heavens, it was difficult to find someone who could comprehend two primal laws. There were not many people in the world who would attempt to do so, and they only felt that it was an extremely difficult task. However, Du Xiaofu did not think this way. As long as someone could do it, then he could definitely do it. He even thought that not only would he want to try comprehending the laws of space and matter, but he would also want to try comprehending the laws of time and the laws of the soul. If the four great laws of nature were finally merged into one, what kind of realm would he reach? If an outsider heard this thought, they would definitely curse him as a madman. I need to break through to truth severing. Du Xiaofu thought about it. Right now, he did not have much time to waste here. He could only choose a law to break through to truth severing, and then slowly comprehend it in the future. He focused all of his attention on the wisp of chaotic vital energy in his body. At the same time, the power of the laws of space began to rapidly circulate. Multiple mysterious runes flashed, covering his body. There was a dull wong sound, and the surrounding spatial domain suddenly expanded, once again spreading out into the distance, directly covering an area of tens of thousands of miles. The law imprint in Du Xiaofu's mind was shining, and a part of the pattern became incomparably resplendent, releasing a vast light that illuminated his Niwen palace. Terrifying fluctuations were vast and mighty, as if they had come from ancient times, frightening one's soul. As Du Xiaofu's power of the laws of space merged with his chaotic vital energy, even more invisible tracks appeared before his eyes. This time, Du Xiaofu did not delay, nor was he afraid of wasting a long time. He directly immersed himself in comprehension, continuously observing the traces of the laws of space. Just like this, he once again entered a state of selflessness and was unable to perceive anything in the outside world. However, the spatial domain outside his body was still expanding in the void, preventing any external objects from approaching. At the very least, in the younger generation of this origin space, no one could surpass it by a single step. The laws of space, I feel the violent fluctuations of the laws of space. Brother Du wants to use the power of the laws of space to step into truth severing. In the distance, He Jibai and the other two had retreated tens of thousands of miles away, but their primordial spirit power had been spying on the movements in the distance. Although they could not penetrate Du Xiaofu's spatial domain, they could clearly feel some of the changes within. Brother Du has already reached perfection on the path of the laws of thunder and lightning. If he cultivates the laws of matter, it will be easier to control them all. At that time, stepping into the immortal realm will be much easier than the laws of space. Yu Chengliang murmured, as if he did not understand Du Xiaofu's approach. Everyone knew that the three primordial laws of time, space, and soul were relatively ethereal, while the laws of matter were the subjective expression of the entire world, and were easier to grasp. Therefore, the laws that the vast majority of the creatures in the 33 cultivated were at the level of the laws of matter. Du Xiaofu chose to make a breakthrough in the laws of space. In the future, he would definitely walk further on this path. But wanting to control the complete laws of space was something that was very difficult to accomplish. Brother Du's attainments in the laws of space are also quite impressive. He should have his own plans. I believe that with his talent, controlling the complete laws of space until reaching the immortal realm shouldn't be something difficult. He Jibai was much more confident. He was very optimistic about Du Xiaofu. It was just that he also never thought that Du Xiaofu's ambition was countless times greater than he thought. What Du Xiaofu really wanted was to master all four kinds of primordial laws. Of course, he could not possibly say these words to He Jibai and the rest. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Just as Du Xiaofu was continuously comprehending, waves of violent undulations were emitted continuously. Time slowly passed, and he had no concept of time in his mind at all. And as his comprehension of the laws of space became more and more profound, the power on his body was constantly rising with every instant, as if there was no peak. A vast aura pervaded out and spread in all directions. Within the range of Du Xiaofu's space domain, a strange scene appeared. Everything was still. The fish in the water stopped swimming, the lake water stopped flowing, the ripples on the water surface froze, and the birds in the sky spread their wings but could not move forward. Everything seemed to have been cast by the fixed body technique. Everything was still. If not for He Jibai and the other two retreating far enough, they probably would not have been able to escape from such a situation. Chapter 2738. In this vast spatial domain, everything was silent and still. It was as if an unmoving painting was unfurled, showing off its beauty. The only difference was that at the center of the painting, there was a purple-robed youth sitting cross-legged at the bottom of the lake. The aura on his body continued to rise until it reached a certain peak, then it stopped. The so-called truth-severing realm is to cut the cage and reconstruct the true self. If you want to break through this realm, you must give up on unnecessary details and focus on the true meaning of a law. You must comprehend one of the 4 great primordial laws and reach perfection. Du Xiaofu's spiritual sense was sealed, but his mind was constantly thinking about what Elder Kong had said to him. Cutting the cage and reconstructing the true self was a process of transformation and also a process of understanding oneself. During this process, you must constantly perfect a certain primordial law until you completely control it. Then, you will have the opportunity to step into the next realm. Du Xiaofu's mind was free of distracting thoughts and reached an unprecedented state of emptiness. As for He Jibai, Yu Chengliang, and Yu Chengyu, the 3 of them were waiting far away, constantly paying attention to all the movements here. From time to time, they needed to adjust their positions and retreat further away. At the same time that Du Xiaofu broke through, the distant divine martial world also began to undergo drastic changes. After the end of the Great Calamity, the entire 3 continents and Kyushu domain had been peaceful for nearly 2 years. It had been quite some time since the Rock Emperor, Du Xiaofu, left. For such a long time, every place had been calm and peaceful. Besides the competition between the younger generation, there hadn't been any great wars between the various great forces. At the same time, nothing strange happened. Everything seemed to be unusually harmonious. But it was precisely on this day that an enormous tremor suddenly resounded, causing many experts to be jolted awake, and they felt their souls tremble. Moreover, right after this huge tremor, a series of loud rumbling noises sounded one after another. It was as if the sky was collapsing and the earth was caving in. The momentum was great. There's an earthquake. Some experts immediately realized the reason, but no one paid too much attention to it. After all, to cultivators, no matter how huge an earthquake was, it would not affect their lives much. The leaders of the major forces issued orders to the young disciples and sent out countless experts to the outside world to seek help from the ordinary people without cultivation. After that, they continued to busy themselves with the matters at hand and did not pay any attention to the arrival of the earthquake. However, this kind of calmness and composure was quickly broken. Rumble. After the initial tremors, everything seemed to have no intention of stopping. Every place in this world began to shake violently, not to mention the gathering place of the mortals. Even the array formations of the major sects were shattered one after another under this tremor. Large swaths of majestic buildings collapsed and turned into ruins. How could this be? This earthquake is actually so powerful. Finally, someone sensed that something was amiss and became suspicious. Then, one figure after another shot out from where they were standing. They stood in midair and looked around. As they continued to observe, everyone's eyes were filled with endless shock. A huge earthquake has occurred in this world. Someone mumbled. They found it hard to believe this fact. Under the terrifying tremors, the void was violently distorted and deformed. Those with weaker cultivations found it difficult to even stand in the air. Rumble. Everything was still going on. One could see the great earth breaking apart one after another, rupturing open enormous cracks. One could see tall mountains collapsing one after another, turning into rubble that covered the ground. The river roared and shook the 9 heavens. The void swayed and twisted wantonly. Following that, various places fell into great panic. Countless living beings fled, and birds and beasts panicked. They lost all footholds. What's going on? How could such a drastic change happen? Some experts were trembling in fear as they muttered to themselves. They had no idea what was going on. In their eyes, they saw countless huge cracks in the ground. Soil and stones were overturned and rushed to the surface. It was as if there was a peerless, ferocious creature rolling its body underground, driving the entire earth as if it was about to break out of the ground. All the cultivators felt that something was amiss. This was definitely an earth-shattering change. What's going on? Why is such a terrifying scene happening? Is the end of the world coming? Rock Emperor, come back quickly. Come back and save your people. The great Rock Emperor has already left this realm. Who will be able to quell this disaster? Countless living beings were terrified, and they all screamed loudly. At this moment, they missed the Rock Emperor endlessly. If that transcendent young man was still in this world, he would definitely be able to resolve this huge change. The desolate nation. Numerous figures had already gathered in the sky above the palace. Du Tingxian, Du Xiaojing, Jin Qingchun, Du Xiaoqing, Little Tiger, and the others were all present. The 18 heavenly generals, the heavenly beast hall's sacred envoy, and the desolate nation's sacred envoy were all present. There were hundreds of them. The change this time is unprecedented, but I don't know what caused it. The alchemist Saint Wuming's eyes were burning as he looked around and said softly, "Could it be that another disaster is about to happen? Otherwise, why would such a situation occur?" Jin Qingchun was also worried. He furrowed his brows tightly as if he was thinking about something. If only Xiaofu was still in this world. He must know the root cause of this. Han Aodong also frowned and sighed softly. When everyone heard this, they all nodded in agreement. Du Xiaofu had merged with the formless power of the rules of this world. Everything was under his control. It could be said that there was nothing in this world that he could not do. Do you think that all of these changes are because of my brother? Suddenly, Du Xiaojing spoke in a light voice, and it caused everyone present to be stunned. After thinking about it, they felt that this was very likely. To a certain extent, there was an invisible connection between Du Xiaofu and this world. It was not impossible that some great change had happened to him, and it would affect the entire 3 continents and 9 provinces. Xiaojing's words are not without reason. However, if all of this is because of Xiaofu, then something big must have happened to him. Everyone's eyes became serious, and they were faintly worried. Du Xiaofu had gone to the 33 heavens, and no one knew what his current situation was. The changes in this world made them feel somewhat frightened. They did not know if this was a good thing or a bad thing. I hope that Xiaofu is fine. Wuming sighed deeply. He raised his head and looked at the sky with endless prayers. It was as if he could pass through the boundless space and send him to the purple-robed young man's side. We can't care so much now. Immediately send people to various places to help. Du Tingxian did not say much and directly issued such an order. Immediately, Yi Piaoling, Qianguyu, the green fox old monster, and the others flew out and flew in all directions. Soon, all the cultivators in this world moved quickly. No one dared to stay on the ground. Countless spirit talisman masters were mobilized and cast a huge formation to protect the countless ordinary people within it to ensure their safety. No one knew how long it would take for such a scene to pass. Rumble. In this busy scene, the sky collapsed and the earth cracked. The earth shook and the mountains shook. Tsunamis soared into the sky, and waves surged violently. The entire 3 continents and Kyushu realm seemed to have fallen into doomsday. However, this situation continued, and there seemed to be no intention of stopping. After a few days, it showed signs of becoming more and more intense. Have you noticed? The earth is expanding and getting bigger. The ground is constantly rising. A living creature said in a trembling voice. It seemed that he was extremely terrified. Everyone stood in the sky. Under their gazes, a large amount of earth and rocks were squeezed out of the abyss-like cracks on the ground below. Then, they rose up like mountains. Looking from high up in the sky, the scene was indescribably terrifying. In the supreme Changrong heaven, Du Xiaofu was no longer sitting cross-legged at the bottom of the huge lake in the origin space of the Yuqing divine kingdom. His body flew into the air and balls of dazzling light wrapped around him, making him look like a god. A boundless and vast aura was emitted from his body, shaking the void and spreading in all directions. Everything around him was still frozen. The lake beneath his feet, the fish in the water, the birds in the surroundings, and everything else seemed to have been frozen. It was as if they had been carved by the gods. Du Xiaofu closed his eyes. The aura around his body continued to soar, and the domain he formed was still expanding endlessly. Outside, He Zhibai, Yu Chengliang, and Yu Chengyu retreated again and again. They had already retreated more than 100,000 kilometers away. They were all dumbfounded as they watched all this. They couldn't see the changes on Du Xiaofu's body, but the domain not far away was expanding step by step. The three of them could clearly sense it. Brother Du's spatial domain is no longer expanding. It should be about to succeed, right? He Zhibai muttered with a shocked expression. A domain with a radius of 100,000 kilometers. What kind of concept was this? It was definitely an extremely shocking thing. Although all this was only achieved when Du Xiaofu broke through. In the entire Yuqing divine kingdom, no one had ever achieved this when breaking through to the truth-severing realm. It shouldn't be long. Yu Chengliang didn't look at He Zhibai. He only opened his mouth and said in a daze. After he finished speaking, the three of them didn't say anything else. They just waited quietly. As time continued to pass, almost a month had passed. That frightening fluctuation finally showed signs of receding. The spatial domain is starting to retreat. Yu Chengyu shouted, his beautiful face brimming with joy. Let's go and take a look. Yu Chengliang immediately waved his hand and took the lead to shoot out like lightning. The spatial domain rapidly retreated. It was as if a huge amount of energy had been gathered. It flowed like flowing water, accompanied by a series of mysterious runes. Immediately after, all the things that were originally enveloped in it began to move again the moment they were freed from their bindings. The spatial birds flapped their wings and continued to fly happily into the distance. The surface of the lake once again rippled, and the fish at the bottom of the lake shook their heads and wagged their tails, continuing to play happily. It was as if the long period of time before didn't exist to them at all. Yu Chengliang, Yu Chengyu, and He Zhibai followed the spatial ripples. It didn't take long for them to see Du Xiaofu's figure. At this moment, he stood in the air, his purple robes fluttering in the wind. He was domineering and aloof from the world, the divine battle world. The huge changes continued for several months. The entire Kyushu realm of the three continents fell into a huge panic at the beginning. In particular, some of the weaker cultivators and ordinary people without cultivation felt as if the end of the world had arrived. Everyone felt as if their hearts had died. This terrifying change in the world was even more frightening than the disaster that the demon god had brought. At the very least, before the great calamity of the devil religion, all living beings had already mentally prepared themselves. But this time, it had come so suddenly. It was too sudden. However, after a period of adaptation, everyone slowly accepted these changes. With the help of countless experts, the countless mortals who did not have any cultivation were not in any danger to their lives. Powerful talisman masters set up powerful formations and stationed all living beings in the void. This world has undergone a tremendous change. How great of a power is needed to accomplish all of this? Every day, there were many living beings constantly observing the changes between heaven and earth. The most obvious changes were the huge cracks in the Kyushu realm of the three continents. They had been filled with earth and rocks, and had become land, mountain ranges, and rivers once again. The scope of this world has expanded. In the end, someone came to this conclusion, which shocked everyone. If this world was compared to a piece of paper, then the huge and terrifying cracks were tearing this piece of paper into pieces, scattering it everywhere. But in the end, the gaps had been filled up and reformed into a brand new piece of paper. It was even vaster than before. Under the observation of some strong cultivators, they discovered that this world was more than 10 times larger than before. Such a terrifying expansion made them feel incomparably amazed. However, this was not the most inconceivable thing. For those with cultivation, as time passed, countless pleasant surprises surged in their hearts. The suppression between heaven and earth has weakened again. This time, such a change actually happened. Many creatures felt this change. They found that as the upheaval in the world continued to happen, the suppressive force was constantly decreasing. Almost everyone felt that their strength had increased by a lot. This situation made countless people pleasantly surprised and excited. Over the years, many changes had occurred in this world. Whether it was the demon god breaking out of the seal, the tomb of the heavenly Tao appearing, or Du Xiaofu controlling the heavenly Tao, each time it caused a terrifying change. However, the result each time was the same. The suppression between heaven and earth was weakening, and all living beings could vaguely feel that their cultivation was showing signs of a breakthrough. This time, many of the experts in this realm had the same feeling. It's not just the suppression that has weakened. There's also the spiritual qi. Do you feel it? The spiritual qi of heaven and earth is many times denser than before. Another living being screamed in joy, wishing that he could shout this sentence for everyone to hear. However, when many living beings heard this, they all smiled knowingly. How could they not feel such a situation? Yes, the spiritual qi of heaven and earth in this world was too dense. It was completely incomparable to the past. Cultivating in such an environment, even ordinary people with no cultivation would probably be able to break through to a certain realm, let alone those strong cultivators. I'm afraid the 3 continents in Kyushu domain shouldn't be called that in the future. In the desolate country, Du Tingxian and many other strong cultivators gathered together inside. With the drastic changes in the world, the scale of the world had expanded by 10 times. The structure of all the forces would also change along with it. Now, we can conclude that what Xiaofu encountered should not be a bad thing. This matter definitely has something to do with him. Jin Qingchun opened his mouth and said with certainty. When the others heard this, they all nodded. As the true ruler of this world, the source of all the changes here was definitely related to Du Xiaofu. Therefore, it was only now that everyone in the desolate country was truly relieved. They had been worried that something would happen to Du Xiaofu in the 33 heavens. They had been worried for a long time. The world has expanded, the suppression has weakened, and the spiritual qi has become denser. This is a rebirth. Iwuming stroked his beard and sighed. The living beings of this world will eventually have to go to the 33 heavens to explore. The stronger we are, the more beneficial it will be for this world. Du Yunlong said as he took a step forward in the void. That's right, so we should make a breakthrough as soon as possible. I only hope that Kid Xiaofu can send back news soon, so that we can see the situation in the 33 heavens. He's been gone for so long. Every day feels like a cat is scratching at my heart. It's indescribably itchy. Jin Qingchun laughed mischievously as he spoke. I feel like I'm about to break through to the heavenly sage realm. Beside him, Du Xiaojing's red lips parted slightly as she said this. When the devil religion's calamity descended, the desolate country already had more than 10 half-step heavenly sage experts. After Du Xiaofu left, they had not been able to make a breakthrough. Now, under the influence of the drastic changes in the world, everyone felt that they were about to break through. Haha, I feel it too. Jin Qingchun laughed and said. He also felt very happy.